Picture a room about the size of your bedroom, except it has no bedroom next to it. No hallway, no second room of any kind, no upstairs, no downstairs, no kitchen that's separate from the place where you sleep. Just one room, 20 feet long, 14 feet wide, beaten earth for a floor, woven sticks and mud for walls, bundles of dry grass for a roof, and a hole at the top of that roof where the smoke is supposed to go out. Now put 45 degrees Fahrenheit inside that room. That's not the outside temperature, that's the inside temperature, the inside the house temperature, after a night with a fire going. Now put January outside, now take the fire away. So, I make these history stories, and what I find is that everyone has some version of the same thought when I get to medieval winter, which is, yeah, sure, but they were used to it. They were tough. They adapted. And this is true. Completely true. They were tougher in this specific way than almost anyone alive today, and they had adapted, and they had knowledge about surviving cold that we've almost entirely lost. But I want you to actually feel the cold before we talk about surviving it, because you need to understand what the knowledge was for. You need to understand the problem before you can appreciate the solution. The problem was this. You woke up this morning and the fire had gone out. Your name is Will. William properly, but the only people who call you William are the priest when he's angry, and your mother when she passed angry, and into something quieter and more final. You're 12 years old, nearly 13, and you've lived your whole life in the village of Ashfield in Lincolnshire, in the England of the year 1247. The house you live in is a single room, not a large single room, a small single room, a room that holds your mother and your father when he's here, and your sister Agnes and 2 goats behind a low-woven hurdle, and 4 chickens on a perch along the east wall, and everything your family owns and everything your family needs, and the fire pit in the centre of all of it, ringed with 8 stones your grandfather set, and right now, on this January morning before dawn, the fire pit holds nothing but cold ash. You know the fire is out before you open your eyes. You know it from the silence. A living fire makes sounds, small, continuous sounds, the whisper of burning, the occasional settle and pop of coals shifting in the night. Those sounds are gone. In their place is a cold silence. And the cold silence means something specific and urgent, and your body knows what it means before your brain has fully woken. Your eyes open. The house is dark except for the pale grey light working through the gaps in the thatch, the faint suggestion of pre-dawn coming down through the place where the smoke usually goes out. You can see your own breath, not see it exactly, more sense it. There's a wetness to the air when you exhale, a slight thickening, the suggestion of vapour that the dark swallows before it can properly form. You lie still for exactly 1 moment. 1 moment is allowed. 1 moment of not moving while the blanket, rough wool, scratchy against your chin, long past the point where it gives back the warmth you've put into it, lies over you like well-meaning proof that cold is patient and wool has limits. Then you sit up. The cold hits your face like something damp and hostile. Your nose fills with cold air and the smell of ash, the particular smell of cold ash which is different from warm ash. Warm ash smells dry and bitter. Cold ash smells wet, heavy like rain on old burned things. And underneath the ash smell, the smell of the goats, and the chickens and the floor rushes that have been on the floor since October and have absorbed everything that's happened to them since. This is the smell of home in 1247. You've never known anything different, so it isn't unpleasant to you. It's just the smell of the inside. But if you could pull someone from anywhere in the next 800 years and set them in this room right now, they would take one breath and understand immediately that the world they come from and the world you live in are not the same kind of place at all. You reach out and press the back of your hand against the largest stone at the edge of the fire ring. You use the back of the hand, not the palm. The back is more sensitive to heat. You learned this at 8. It reads warmth before your palm does. Normally, even in the depths of the night, the stones hold some warmth. They're heavy dark stones, each one about the size of a man's head, your grandfather's stones, and heat lives in them long after the fire has died back. A hand on a stone at midnight should feel warm. Not blazing, just warm. The suggestion of stored heat. The stone is cold, not morning cold. Cold like it's been cold for hours. This means the fire went out in the deep of the night, not just an hour ago. Which means the room has been doing what rooms do when fires go out in January, losing heat by every mechanism available. Through the walls, through the floor, through the gaps in the thatch, through the simple fact of being a human temperature space inside a January world. The temperature in this room right now is approximately what your refrigerator is set to. You woke up in a refrigerator. Your feet are the worst of it. You'd pulled them up during the night, tucked them toward your body, which helped for a while and then stopped helping, and now they're cold in the specific way that feet get cold when they've been cold for a long time. Not sharp cold anymore, just a deep wooden numbness, a vague suggestion of where your toes are without the normal confirmation of feeling them properly. Your shoulders are pulled up around your ears without you telling them to. Your jaw wants to clench. Your hands inside the blanket are trembling slightly. That fine, involuntary trembling that isn't fear, but is your muscles doing the only thing muscle tissue knows to do when temperature drops below what it requires. You're shivering. What shivering actually is. Your body burning its own stores to maintain core temperature. Calories going up as heat, your body spending its reserves on the simple project of staying at 98 degrees in a 40-degree room. You don't have many reserves. This is January 1247, and food in January is what you put aside in October, what you slaughtered at Martinmas and salted, what you dried and stored, what you have and nothing more. Your body is a furnace, and the furnace is running on what's available, which is the pottage from last night and the pottage from the night before that. And there is not an inch of excess anywhere on you. The fire has to go back on. You get up. This involves a specific sequence that you have learned, not from anyone telling you, but from watching your mother and your father, and from doing it wrong at 6 years old, and doing it less wrong at 8, and by now doing it correctly without thinking. First, you curl tighter for one last moment. Just one. Just to collect whatever warmth the blanket holds and press it against yourself. Then you breathe into your cupped hands, slow and deep, feeling the heat of your own breath collect in your palms. It disperses almost immediately, but it wakes your face up, gets the blood moving in the right direction. Then you sit up and bring the blanket with you, keeping it across your shoulders, not letting it fall, giving the cold no opening. You stand. The floor is cold through the thin leather of your shoes. You slept in your shoes. Everyone sleeps in their shoes in January. Taking your shoes off in January is something done by people who are either very warm or not thinking clearly. The soles are thin in places, worn through at the ball of the right foot, and the cold of the beaten earth comes directly through those thin spots into your foot without ceremony. You go to the fire pit. You crouch beside it and read the ash the way your father reads the condition of a field, with your hands, with your nose, with the experience of having done this before. You scratch at the ash with your fingers gently. The ash is fine and soft and cold and dry smelling, and it comes away from the surface in a small grey cloud that makes you blink. You probe deeper toward the centre of the pit where heat always holds longest, where the coals bank under the ash and can survive hours if tended correctly. Nothing, not even warmth. The ash is cold all the way down. The fire is completely out. This is a small emergency, not the dramatic kind, not the kind that comes with shouting or flames, the quiet, creeping kind, the kind that got someone every winter in Ashfield, the kind that killed people who let it go too long, not quickly, not dramatically, but slowly, grinding them down with cold and wet and the specific exhaustion that comes from a body fighting temperature for 12 hours straight. In an old person, in a sick person, in a young child, in someone who was already thin from the winter's food. The fire going out in January in a medieval peasant house is a small emergency that can become a large one. You go to the corner where the fire things are kept. The flint, dark grey and heavy, worn smooth where your father's thumb rests when he holds it. The fire striker, a piece of iron your father hammered himself from scrap, shaped to fit in the palm, with a groove worn where the thumb goes from years of use. The clay pot with the lid that holds the tinder. You lift the lid and look at the tinder. Shredded dry bark, dried moss. Last summer's grass crumbled fine. You pinch some between your fingers. It crumbles correctly, light and fine and dry. You build your nest in the centre of the cold ash pit. Clear a space in the ash with your bare hands, feeling nothing but cold powder and the hard earth beneath it, and set the tinder there. Around it, a frame of the thinnest kindling from the bundle against the wall sticks the thickness of a finger, laid at angles that let air through. Fire breathes. Close the sticks too tight and the flame suffocates. You know this. You know this in your hands. You hold the flint in your left hand and the striker in your right. Your right hand is shaking. Fine motor control goes first in the cold. Your fingers know what to do, but they're doing it at a slight remove, as if the instructions have to travel through something resistant before arriving. You press the striker to the flint at an angle, sharp and fast. The spark goes wide. Again. Better. This one lands at the edge of the tinder nest, and you see it for 1 second, a tiny red point, a coal-orange worm about the length of your thumbnail. And then it dies. Third strike. The spark lands in the centre of the dry moss, and the moss catches, not dramatically, not with a sound, just a tiny thread of orange, glowing, alive. You put the striker down. You bring your face close. Your breath could kill this. You know this. Learned it hard at 6, blowing too hard across a tiny spark and watching it scatter and die. Now you breathe differently. Slow, slow, controlled, from the back of the throat. A thin stream of air that is barely a breath. More like the suggestion of wind. You hold your face 3 inches from the tinder and breathe carefully into it. The orange thread widens. There's smoke now. Thin, white, rising from the moss as it burns without yet flaming. This is the stage where patience is everything. You hold still. You keep the thin stream of air going. You wait. The flame comes quietly. 1 moment smoke. The next moment a small amber flame eating the edge of the tinder. Now the kindling. You add it carefully, the thinnest sticks first, each one placed to let air beneath it. The fire needs to breathe. You know this. You add 2, then 3, then a slightly thicker piece, and the flame moves from the tinder to the kindling with the tentative confidence of something new to existence but committed to continuing. There's sound now. The first sound of the fire, a small crackling as the sticks find their temperature, a brief hiss as any moisture in the wood escapes as steam, and warmth, barely any, just the warmth rising from a small flame, the warm air lifting to touch your face, your cold face, for the first time since yesterday. You feed it more kindling, then a split piece of wood, wrist thick, and another. The fire builds slowly, not quickly, never quickly at this stage. This will take 15 minutes before it's truly established, before it has the confidence that means it will survive being left alone. But it's going. The small emergency is in retreat. You sit back on your heels and watch the fire. Your hands are shaking less. Just from the few minutes of proximity, the blood is moving differently. Across the fire pit, your mother's eyes are open. She's been watching. She doesn't speak and she doesn't help, because you know how to do this, and she taught you to do this, and doing it is yours now. She watches, and when the fire is clearly going, she nods once. That's enough. Your sister Agnes is curled against your mother's back, asleep, generating the extraordinary heat that 5-year-olds generate, like a coal wrapped in a small person. The goats in their section are shifting and scraping, their breath making white plumes in the cold air. The chickens on their perch are various degrees of still. One of them is very still. You go to it. And here I want to pause for a moment, because what you're about to do is one of those medieval things that sounds absurd until you understand it, and then it sounds completely sensible, and then it sounds like the most obvious thing in the world, and then you think, why don't we all still know this? You take the very still chicken from its perch. It makes a disgruntled sound, a low clucking complaint about being handled. You tuck it inside your blanket against your chest and wrap the blanket around the two of you. The chicken is outraged. The chicken expresses this outrage in muffled, feathery terms. You hold it against your ribs and you can feel two things: the warmth of its small heart against you and the trembling in its small body, a faster version of your own shivering, the chicken's body doing its own metabolic negotiation with the cold. You stand by the fire with the chicken inside your blanket. This takes 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, the trembling in the bird's body stops. Its feathers smooth down from the puffed defensive position they'd taken in the cold. It settles against your chest with the resigned acceptance of an animal that has decided this is acceptable. You put it back on the perch and check the others. 3 are fine, puffed up in the way birds hold heat, by trapping air in their feathers, the same principle as a down coat, just grown rather than manufactured. The 4th is cold enough that it gets the same treatment. 2 minutes in the blanket. The small heart warming, the feathers settling. Your mother is up now, moving with the stiff, careful motion of someone whose joints have been cold all night. She goes to the fuel pile and looks at it and comes back and looks at you with the expression she uses when she's assessed a situation and reached a conclusion, and the conclusion is unpleasant, but the only one available. "We need wood," she says. "I know." Before the snow comes. You look up at the smoke gap in the thatch. The sky visible through it is pale grey, and flat in the particular way that in January in Lincolnshire means snow, either coming or arrived. "I'll go this morning," you say. "Take the sled." The sled is outside, under the overhang with the woodpile. You made it with your father 3 winters ago, 2 runners of bent ash and a platform of scavenged boards, with a rope at the front to wrap around your waist. One runner is slightly warped, which means it pulls to the left, which means you compensate constantly, which you do automatically now without thinking. The sled is how you move weight in winter. Without it, every piece of wood comes home in your arms, one armful at a time, wearing you down by volume. But first, pottage. Your mother is already at the pot, hanging it from the iron chain over the fire, pouring water from the bucket. The bucket has a skin of ice across the top, thin ice broken easily with the ladle, because the bucket lives just inside the door, and just inside the door is apparently the same temperature as just outside the door on a night like last night. She adds the leftover grain from the night before, a handful of dried peas, 3 small turnips cut fine, a piece of salt pork checked first by smell and colour and touch. While the pottage heats, the room begins to change. Not immediately, not quickly. But the fire is going, and the fire is committed to going, and in 15 minutes the air near the pit is genuinely warmer. Not room warm, not comfortable warm, but fire warm. The radiating warmth that comes from actual combustion 2 feet from your face. The stones around the pit are still cold. They'll take an hour or more to absorb enough heat to radiate it back. But the air above the fire is warm, and warm air rises, and the warm air rising is the beginning of the room's daily fight against January. You eat the pottage with the bowl in both hands. You've done this so many times that you don't think about why, but the why is simple. The bowl is warm. The warm clay of the bowl transfers heat through your palms and up your wrists and into your forearms. The hot food in your stomach begins to radiate warmth from the inside. You're warming yourself from both directions, outside and in 10 minutes you feel almost functional. Agnes wakes and eats her pottage with total concentration, both hands on the bowl exactly like you. Your mother eats standing near the fire, turning slightly every minute, presenting first her front and then her back to the heat. She does this so naturally she probably doesn't notice she does it. It's in her body now. The knowledge is in the muscles. That's what I mean when I say medieval people knew things about cold that we've forgotten. We talk about medieval poverty, the cold houses and the poor food and the hard work, and all of that is true. But inside that hard life was a deep and specific knowledge. A knowledge you don't learn from a book or a class, but from years of cold mornings and cracked hands and watching the people around you do the things that keep them alive. Your mother turns toward the fire. Her face in the firelight is young in some ways and not young in other ways. She's 28. In 1247, 28 is not middle-aged, not old, but it's not unmarked either. It's 28 winters in a cold house, and 28 summers in the fields, and 2 childbirths, and the years before and after each of those. All of it written in her face in ways that are more specific than age. She is, within the limits of what this life allows, very competent. You finish your pottage. "I'll get the wood," you say. "The dead elm on the Eastfield edge," she says. "Your father said in September it was ready. I know the one." And "I'll take the doubled mittens," you say, before she can say it. She looks at you. Something in her face that isn't quite a smile. You get the doubled mittens. They're in the wooden chest with the other good things. Your grandmother made them. 2 layers of wool, the outer one deliberately cut larger than the inner to leave an air gap between the layers. An air gap is an insulator. An air gap is still air that can't move and therefore can't carry heat away. Your grandmother understood the physics of this without calling it physics. She called it making mittens properly. The doubled mittens are the warmest things you own, and you reserve them for work where warmth matters more than the mitten's survival. because ordinary work tears through things and these need to last. You wrap yourself in everything else. The linen undershirt, the knee-length wool tunic belted with leather, the heavy felted cloak pinned at the shoulder with the iron pin, the wool hose tied above the knee. On your head, the wool coif that covers your head and ties under your chin. The coif matters. You've been told your whole life that you lose most heat through your head, and while you can't verify the exact physiology, the solutions cover the head is certainly correct. Fully dressed, you look like a small shapeless bundle of rough wool moving purposefully toward a door. You look exactly like everyone else in this village. You pick up the axe. The axe is beautiful in the specific way tools are beautiful. The iron head slightly pitted with use, the haft smooth where your father's hands and your hands have held it, the balance perfect once you know it. Every time you use it, your hands find the same worn spot, the same grip, the same angle. The handle knows the shape of the men in your family. You push the door open. The cold of outside hits your face like something damp and hostile that has been waiting. Not the managed cold of the house, the cold the fire was fighting. The outside cold of a January morning in Lincolnshire when the temperature has gone below freezing overnight and the air smells like iron and the ground crackles under your feet. Your breath comes out in a white cloud, a proper cloud, not a little mist. It hangs in the air for a second and then disperses, and you're already exhaling the next one, already making another cloud, a trail of white breath that marks your passage across the frost-white yard. The yard is frozen, every surface frosted, a hard, heavy frost that has settled on the mud and the wood pile and the roof, and the bare branches of the apple tree that will bloom in May, and right now looks like something that used to be alive and is testing the memory. The mud of the yard is frozen solid, and frozen mud sounds different from unfrozen mud when you step on it. Harder, shorter, more like stone than earth. You pull the sled from under the overhang and wrap the rope around your waist. The village is waking up around you. Smoke rising from other houses, not all of them. Some are ahead of the day, their fires well managed through the night. From the smoke you can read who's up and burning and who is still trying to coax their morning fire from yesterday's coals. The smoke is visible against the flat white sky, each plume rising and bending slightly in the cold still air. You pass Old Maud's house. Old Maud's smoke is already going. Of course it is. Maud's fire never goes out in winter. This is not luck. This is Maud's specific expertise, accumulated over more winters than anyone in Ashfield can count, including Maud. She wakes every 2 hours in the night, your mother says. She reads the air temperature and the fire sound, and if either has shifted, she gets up and attends. She sleeps in 2-hour pieces through the night, and she has not had a cold morning in 20 years. She described this once to your mother without drama, as simple fact. Of course you wake and check it. What else would you do? What else would you do? You pass the mill pond. The mill pond is frozen completely, solidly, all the way across. Thomas Millward has been fighting this for a week. Frozen mill pond means a still wheel. A still wheel means unground grain. Unground grain means the whole village is eating old flour while the pile in the mill keeps growing. Thomas is out on the ice this morning with a long iron bar breaking the surface around the wheel housing, trying to free it for even part of the day. You can see him from here, a thick-shouldered man moving carefully on the ice, the bar rising and falling with a dull cracking sound. You've seen his hands. Cracked along the knuckles, the skin split open by repeated exposure to cold water and cold air, bleeding slightly from several places. He wraps them at night in rags soaked in goose fat. By morning the fat has absorbed or rubbed away, and his hands are back to their bare, cracked state. This is the cost of winter work. The same way the ditch worker's feet are wet, the miller's hands bleed, the carpenter's knuckles crack, the goodwife's lips split. Cold finds its way in everywhere and leaves these small marks. You look at your own hands. The left hand has a split along the side of the index finger, opened when you stoked the fire this morning, bleeding slightly now where the cold has dried it. You put the mitten back on. The wool presses into the split with a small specific discomfort that you notice, and then set aside, because there is nothing to be done about it, and the wood needs fetching. The forest path is a pale line in the frost, worn to smoothness by years of feet and sleds, running between two fields that in summer grow oats and rye, and now hold frozen stubble, each broken stalk throwing a tiny shadow in the low morning light. If you weren't cold and focused and carrying an axe, you might stop to look at it. The frost patterns on frozen stubble in January light are genuinely beautiful, each stalk coated in ice crystals, each crystal catching the grey light differently, the whole field a low silver texture. You don't stop. The cold is working its way into your fingers despite the doubled mittens. Not sharp cold yet, not pain, just a progressive stiffness, the slight lag between what you intend your fingers to do and what they actually do. You squeeze your hands inside the mittens rhythmically, open and close, open and close. This keeps the blood moving. Stop doing it, and your hands will be numb in 10 minutes. You reach the forest edge. The smell changes at the tree line. More earth, more bark. The particular cold vegetable smell of decomposing leaf litter that never fully dries out even in summer and is now frozen into itself, brown and preserved under its frost coating. The smell of things that grew and stopped growing and are in the long, slow process of becoming something else. You find the dead elm. Your father pointed it out in September, during one of the last good working days before the harvest got heavy. A large elm, 3 feet across at the base, dead from the top down, the upper branches grey and bare even then while the living trees were green. By now the dead wood has dried further into itself, the moisture gone, the fibres ready. Dead dry elm burns hot and long. Your father knew what he was looking at in September, and he was right. You examine it. The lower trunk is solid, the wood not rotted. Rotted wood is useless fuel. It chokes a fire with smoke and gives back almost no heat, but clean and cold and ready. You lift the axe. The first blow rings high and sharp in the cold air. Wood chopping sounds different in cold weather. The frozen wood doesn't give the deep thunk of warm summer wood, but a sharper, higher sound, almost metallic, a crack rather than a thud. The vibration comes back up the haft into your hands differently too, sharper, insisting, travelling through your palms and wrists and up your forearms before the cold air swallows the echo. You find a rhythm. Swing, plant, lift, swing. The cold air moves past your face with each upswing. Your shoulders begin to warm within minutes. This is a fact that takes cold weather workers by surprise until they know it. Physical work in January is warm work. Your body is a furnace, and the fuel is your morning's pottage and your body's stored reserves, and the rate at which the furnace burns increases with the rate at which you work. The labourer in the field in January is warmer than the person standing watching him. Movement is warmth. Your body knows this, and so does everyone who has worked through winters without the option of not working. Your shoulders warm, your back warms, your chest under the cloak is almost comfortable. Your face stays cold. Faces always stay cold. But the rest of you is generating its own heat now, and the January cold has to work harder for you than it did this morning when you were lying still. 1 hour. You've cut 3 manageable logs and several smaller branches, enough to stack the sled well. Not as high as you'd like. The wood is heavier than it looks. Wet cold elm is dense, and each piece wants to fall off the stack before you've secured it, but enough for 2 days' worth of fire. Maybe 3 if your mother is careful, and your mother is always careful. Loading the sled is its own negotiation. Each piece lifted and set crosswise on the platform, the longer pieces on the bottom, the shorter stacked above, the axe handle wedged under the stack to keep the top pieces from sliding on the rope. The sled is heavy when you're done. You lean into the rope, your whole body driving forward against the weight, and the runners find the frost and slide. Flat ground, manageable. This slight uphill near the village edge. Not manageable so much as committed to. You stop once, hands on your knees, breath coming in white puffs. The cold air going deep into your lungs has a particular sensation, a cold that extends all the way down into the chest, that makes you aware of the tubes inside you that warm air normally travels through. Like drinking something too cold and feeling it all the way down, but with every breath. You straighten up and keep pulling. There's sweat on your back. Sweat. In January. While pulling a sled. This is the paradox of winter physical work, and I want to be clear about this because it killed people who didn't understand it. If you work hard enough to sweat in cold weather, and then you stop working and stand in the wind, the sweat evaporates off your skin and carries your heat away. The same mechanism that cools you in summer by evaporation operates in winter too. In winter there is no surplus heat to lose. In winter, rapid heat loss is dangerous in a way that is not dramatic or quick, but very real. The knowledge your family carries about this is, never let yourself dry from the outside. If you've worked hard and sweated, don't stand in the cold air to cool down. Get inside, keep moving, don't stop while you're wet. You don't stop in the wind, you keep moving. The village is fully awake now, the morning's grey light present and flat, people about their January work. 2 women at the well drawing water, their breath clouds above them like a private weather system. A man repairing a gap in his garden wall with cold hands, pressing mud and straw into the hole with the determination that says he's been putting this off for days. 3 children running in the track for no reason other than running. Because children who are cold and free for a moment run. Because running is warm and they know this even if they don't know why. You watch them as you pass and feel the weight of the sled rope in your hands. You were 6, not that long ago. The wood goes into the stack under the overhang, each piece lifted and placed, the new integrated with the old, larger pieces to the outside, smaller toward the centre where they'll be shielded, the split pieces with their flat faces turned inward where they'll dry fastest. When you're done, you step back and look at the stack. Better, not where it should be. In a managed winter, the stack should be twice this height by January, should have been built through September and October. But better. 2 days of certainty when this morning you had none. The specific satisfaction of a concrete problem met with a concrete solution. The door opens. Your mother's head appears. "Come in," she says. "Pottage." Inside. The house is warmer, not dramatically warmer, but the fire has been going for 2 hours and the stones around the pit are beginning to give back what they've absorbed, beginning to radiate, and the air near the fire has crossed some threshold from cold fire warmth to something you'd call genuine warmth, if you were being generous with the word. You unwrap yourself piece by piece, the cloak on its peg, the outer wool layers, the stockings last because the stockings are damp with sweat from the walk and the work, and you hang them near the fire. Your feet, freed from the wet stockings, are cold and slightly grey-pink. You put them near the fire and the warmth comes at them immediately, not overwhelming, just present. The fire saying, "Here." Your toes begin to report back. First numb, then that particular pins and needles signal that means blood returning to cold tissue. Then finally, after a few minutes, just warmth. Just the normal sensation of feet being feet. There is nothing quite like warming cold feet by a fire. There is a physical pleasure in it that is completely out of proportion to anything else your life contains. The warmth moving through the arch of the foot, the sensation in each toe coming back like a light being turned on, the feeling of being fully present in your own body after hours of being only partially there. Modern people have warm feet almost always, and so this pleasure is almost entirely unavailable to them. You have it every January morning. You have it specific and exact and complete. You sit with your feet near the fire and eat the second bowl of pottage and say nothing. Your mother is spinning. She does this every morning at this point in the day. Sits near the fire with her drop spindle, the wool roving wound around the distaff tucked under her arm, and spins. Her hands know this work the way your hands know the axe, without the brain's involvement, automatically, the spindle dropping and rising and turning, the thread forming even and consistent as breathing. She can spin and watch Agnes and think about other things entirely, and the spindle keeps going. This wool will become thread. The thread will become cloth, eventually after weaving, which is more days at the loom against the east wall. The cloth will become warmth on someone's body. In the medieval world, cloth is not just clothing, it's insulation, it's survival technology, it's what the human body uses to extend its own temperature into the cold world around it. England's entire economy in this period runs partly on wool, the fleece of English sheep spun and woven and exported to Flanders, to Italy, across the Mediterranean, the fabric of Europe. But before it's an export, it's a blanket, it's a cloak. It's what stands between a person and a January morning. Your mother's hands move. Agnes has been given a task. She's sitting on the floor picking through a small pile of raw fleece, pulling it apart, removing twigs and grass from the wool. A slow and necessary job for small fingers. She approaches it with the gravity of a 5-year-old who has decided this is her work, and it is therefore important. Every so often she holds up a cleaned piece of fleece and looks at it with satisfaction. The house sounds, fire, spindle, small hands in wool, the 3 sounds that fill a medieval house in winter. The sound of warmth being maintained and warmth being made, and the people who maintain and make it. You're looking at the fire when someone knocks. 3 knocks. Pause. 1 more. You know that knock. Thomas Reeve is the Lord's Reeve, the man who manages the agricultural business of the manor on the Lord's behalf. He is not a bad man. He is thorough and professional, and his job in January is often the job of informing you that something must be done immediately in the cold, and so his knocks tend to arrive at inconvenient moments like this one. Your mother opens the door. Thomas Reeve, broad, solid, weathered in the specific way that 30 years of outdoor work weathers a man. Small eyes that take in the room in one sweep. A voice shaped by years of projecting across winter fields. "Good wife," he says. "Thomas," she says. The Eastfield drainage ditch, he says. Ice has blocked the channel under the road. Needs clearing before the snow comes. He looks at you. Lord Ranulph wants it done today. Your mother's face does not change. Will is 12, she says. I know his age. He's already done the thatch and the wood this morning. I know it. He doesn't sound particularly affected by this. He sounds like a man who has a list of things and is working through it. But the ditch has to be cleared. If it stays blocked, the Eastfield floods when the thaw comes. That's your family's strips in the Eastfield. He says this last thing quietly, not as a threat, as a fact. The flooding would affect your family's crops. This is the web of obligation and consequence that connects ditch clearing to your family's grain supply. And Thomas Reeve is letting you see the whole web at once. Your mother looks at you. You look at her. There's nothing to be said. The Lord's work is the Lord's work. Your family holds this house and these strips of field by right of tenure, and tenure has a price, and the price is labour, and today the labour is the ditch. This is the world in 1247. You didn't choose it. It is simply the world. I'll get the tools, you say. Meet me at the Eastfield gate in half an hour, Thomas Reeve says, and turns and walks away. The door closes. Your mother goes back to the fire and adds a piece of wood without speaking. Then she turns and gets the doubled mittens from the chest and holds them out. The doubled ones, she says. The ditch work will ruin them. She holds them out in the same position, not moving. You take the doubled mittens. The Eastfield is 15 minutes along the track, past the church, past the frozen mill pond where Thomas Millward is still fighting his wheel with his cracked hands, along the hedge-lined path between bare winter fields. You walk quickly, not because you want to, but because walking quickly is warm and because the sky's doing something. The flat grey has shifted to flat white, and the flat white has a weight to it, an intention. The air has changed quality, thicker, wetter, the particular quality of air in the hour before snow. You can smell it. Cold weather people learn this. Dry cold and wet cold smell different. Wet cold, snow cold, is heavier in the nose, a slight metallic sweetness underneath the iron smell of frost. Your nose is telling you the truth about the sky. Thomas Reeve is at the Eastfield gate with a villain named Roger, a square-built man of 30, with a beard that has ice crystals in it from breathing cold air into it all morning. Roger is holding a long spade and looking at the ditch with the expression of a man who has accepted something unpleasant without too much internal struggle. Here, Thomas Reeve says. He points to where 2 weeks of hard frost have built the ice up layer by layer, until it's pressed a solid mass against the drainage channel boards, effectively stopping the channel. Break the ice first, then clear it. The ice axe is a different tool from the wood axe. Shorter handle, broader head, meant for breaking ice, not cutting grain. The first blow sounds completely different from the axe on elm. Higher, sharper, a ringing crack that echoes off the frozen field. The ice doesn't shatter cleanly. It lifts in large connected chunks, still attached to the sheet below, stubborn. You work the axe along the cracks, and Roger works beside you with the long spade, scooping the broken pieces out and up onto the bank. 5 minutes in, your shoulders are warm, your feet are not. The ditch bank slopes, and there's no way to stand in it without 1 foot lower than the other, and the lower foot is in cold water and ice. Cold water finds its way over the tops of your shoes within minutes. Cold water in wool stockings is its own specific misery, and I want to be precise about this. It's not just cold, it's wet cold. and wet cold removes the insulating properties of wool, and without those insulating properties, the cold has direct access to your skin, and direct access means the cold is winning and your body is paying. You keep working. Roger is singing something under his breath. A repeated fragment of a song, 3 lines that he keeps starting over. The rhythm helps. The axe finds the rhythm. Swing, crack, swing, crack. Your arms know what to do. You let them do it. Thomas Reeve watches from the bank above, occasionally pointing at a section not yet addressed. He says there, in a tone that adds no information to the pointing. An hour. The channel is clear. The ice that was blocking it lies on the bank in chunks, already showing the first signs of softening where frozen earth has touched. Unfrozen earth. The slow reversal beginning. Thomas Reeve examines it. Good, he says. 1 word. Then, don't dawdle getting back. Snow's coming. You look at the sky. It's coming soon. An hour, maybe less. You don't dawdle. The walk home is 3 times worse than the walk to the ditch, which was already cold enough. Your shoes are soaked through. Your stockings are soaked. Your feet have lost the fine sensation of toes and are reporting their location as a vague numb mass at the ends of your legs. Each step sends a small shock of cold up through the thin wet soles. Your hands are all right. The doubled mittens held. But everything from the ankle down is a cold emergency in slow motion. You pass old Maud in the track. She's carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth tucked under her arm, and she looks at you and then directly at your feet, the way people who know things look at the thing that's wrong before you've told them what it is. Wet shoes, she says. Ditch work, you say. She looks at you for a moment with the particular expression of someone deciding whether to offer what they know. She decides. Come, she says. You almost say no. Your own house is 2 minutes away, and your fire is there, and your mother is there, and you want to be in front of your own fire. But there's something in Maud's voice that isn't quite an invitation. More like a direction. You follow her. Maud's house is the same construction as yours. Same dimensions, same 1 room. But it smells different. More herbs, less animal. Maud's chickens have their own small structure against the exterior wall, and she doesn't keep goats inside, and the herbs she grows and dries are more numerous and more varied than anyone else's in the village. Bundles of things you don't recognize hang from the beams, darker things, things with names you don't know. Her fire is magnificent. Not large. A large fire in a small house is wasteful and dangerous, but managed to a degree that is almost artistic. A deep bed of coals, perfectly red, the burning logs arranged so they burn slowly and evenly for hours, 2 larger pieces of oak at the back to take it through the day. The stones around the pit are not the cold grey of your morning stones, but amber warm, radiating heat you can feel 3 feet away. The room is warm. Genuinely, actually warm. This is what Maud's 2-hour check nights produce. She kneels without ceremony and removes your shoes. Then the stockings, which come off wet and cold, and she wrings them, actually wrings them out like washing, the water they've absorbed coming out in a dark trickle, and hangs them on the iron hook near the fire. Then she looks at your feet. They're mottled, red-white in unpleasant patches, not the deep purple of frostbite, but not the normal pink of healthy tissue. They ache as the warmth from the fire begins to reach them, the specific ache of blood returning to tissue that's been too cold. Maud doesn't comment on the colour. She gets a cloth, dry, clean, rough, and wraps it around your feet. Not tight, just dry and warm and present. Don't put them too close, she says. Too fast is worse than cold. This is real. When tissue has been very cold, warming it too rapidly causes the outer surface to dilate before the deeper tissue is warmed, and the result is more painful than the cold itself, and in extreme cases more damaging. You warm cold extremities slowly. You wrap them. You let warmth arrive at its own pace. She brings you something hot in a cup. It's not ale, not water. Something she's decocted from the dried plants on her beams. Thin, slightly bitter, slightly sweet. The flavour of herbs you can't name. Whether it works medicinally in the way she believes it works, you can't say. What it does is, it's hot. Hot liquid in your hands and your mouth and your throat and then your chest, adding warmth from the inside while the fire adds it from the outside, and the two warmths meet somewhere in the middle. You drink it. Maud sits across from you and says nothing for a moment. The fire crackles. Outside, the first few flakes of snow tap against the oiled cloth window. The reeve had you in the ditch, she says. The Eastfield drainage, it had to be cleared. Everything has to be done, she says. The question is who does it and when. She looks at the window. Your father's still at the oxen. Since November. She stands, goes to the fire, adjusts a log with the iron poker she handles like an extension of her hand. How is your mother managing? We're fine. The fire went out this morning. How she knows these things is one of the small mysteries of small villages. I got it going, you say. Yes. Something in her voice, not quite approval, but something that treats getting it going as the correct response to the situation, which it is. I want to tell you some things, she says. You look at her over the edge of the cup. The straw, she says, under the mattress, not on top, under. You consider this. A layer of dry straw under the mattress, she says, between the mattress and the floor. The floor is cold, and the cold comes up through it all night. A layer of straw, dry straw, it has to be dry, traps air between the mattress and the earth. Air doesn't conduct cold. Air insulates. 2 inches of trapped air under the mattress is 2 inches less cold coming into you while you sleep. This is obvious now that she's said it. The same principle as the doubled mittens your grandmother made. Layers, with air between them. Air is the insulator. Your grandmother knew this about hand coverings. Maud is saying it about sleeping. The same in the walls, she says, when it's very cold, when you can feel a draught coming in through the gaps in the wattle, stuff dry grass into the gaps, not anything wet, not anything heavy, just dry grass, packed in gently. The draught comes through small gaps, dry grass in the gaps, the draught stops. You knew this, half knew it, had seen it done without knowing the full reason. Now the reason is clear. What else, you say? She looks at you steadily, making a decision about how much to give. Hot before you go out, she says. In the morning, before you go out into the cold, drink something hot, eat something hot. The hot goes into your stomach and your body has fuel for the first hour outside. People who go out cold in the morning take longer to warm and spend more of themselves on warming. Your body has to burn its own reserves to stay warm. Start it with something hot and it starts ahead. You think about this morning. Your mother's pottage before the wood fetching. The bowl in both hands. You do this without knowing you're doing it. Your mother insists on it without explaining it. Your mother does a lot of things she doesn't explain. The feet, Maud says. Dry feet in January are more important than almost anything else. The body will sacrifice the feet to protect the core. When your feet are cold, they pull heat from your whole body to try to warm themselves. When they're wet and cold, they're failing at that and pulling even more. Wet feet in January cost you more than just cold feet. Keep the feet dry. She looks at your stockings hanging by the fire. Dry them every night, she says, before sleep. Not just sort of dry, completely dry, the last moisture gone. Sleep in dry stockings. It sounds like nothing. It isn't nothing, you say. No. Something in her face. A slight satisfaction that you've said the right thing. The breath, she says. In the night when the fire is low, pull the blanket over your mouth and nose when you sleep. Your own breath, trapped in the blanket, stays warm around your face. A small, warm pocket. Your face stays warm without the fire's help. Simple. I do that, you say. Good. Keep doing it. She goes to the wooden chest against the wall. Old chest, dark wood, iron fittings dull with age, and opens it and takes out something folded. A bed covering bulkier than a blanket, made from smaller pieces of cloth sewn together into one large piece, thick and heavy. My mother made this, she says. She filled it. Wool offcuts, fleece ends, the dried seed heads of certain plants that hold air in them. She stuffed the cloth with everything soft and dry she had, and she stitched it closed, and then she stitched across it to hold the stuffing in place. She holds it up. 30 years on my bed. The principle is the same as everything else. You are trapping air. Soft material holds air inside it. Air doesn't conduct heat away from your body. The more air between you and the cold, the warmer you sleep. You've seen these in Lincoln Market. Merchants selling them. Rich families buying them. The wealthy have goose down, she says matter-of-factly. Down feathers from geese, packed into cases. Each feather is shaped to hold air. A pound of down has more air in it than a barrel of straw. The Lord's bed has a down mattress and a down coverlet and linen sheets and curtains hanging around the frame on all four sides to trap the warm air in. He wakes up warm. He wakes up in a different temperature than you did this morning. She puts the coverlet back in the chest. Before next winter, she says, have your father make curtains for your sleeping area. Hung cloth around the mattress, even rough cloth, even just old worn cloth you can't use for anything else. The curtains trap the warm air your body makes in the night. Your body makes heat. The curtains hold it near you instead of letting it rise to the roof and escape. She closes the chest. Your stockings are dry. She takes them off the hook and hands them to you, and you pull them on, warm from the fire's hours of attention, dry and warm against your cold feet. And the sensation is, it's one of the purest pleasures this life contains. Warm, dry wool against cold, clean feet. The warmth precise and specific and earned. Your shoes, she hands back slightly less wet than before, not dry, better. Go home, she says. Tell your mother I'll send peas this afternoon. She'll say we're fine, you say. Maud looks at you with the expression of someone deciding whether this distinction is worth addressing. Tell her anyway, she says. You stand. Your feet are human again. Thank you, you say. Maud makes a small dismissive gesture. This is how things are. It requires no thanks. You step outside. The snow has decided. Not the exploratory flakes of an hour ago. Actual snow, steady and purposeful, falling in thick flakes that land on your cloak and on the frozen track and on every surface in the village simultaneously. The sky is white, and the snow is white, and the sound of the village has already changed. Snow absorbs sound. It lands, and the world gets quieter in a specific way. The edges of everything softened, the distances between things seeming longer. You walk quickly. By the time you reach your gate, the track is beginning to be white. The peat stacks and wood piles and the thatch of every roof are taking their white covering. The church at the far end of the village is already half changed, the grey of its stone roof becoming something lighter inside. The door closes behind you, and the quiet of the snowfall is replaced by the warmth and sound of your house, the fire, the drop spindle, your mother's voice telling Agnes to keep her hands out of the pottage pot. Your mother looks at you, at your feet, at your face. "Maud," she says. "Wet shoes," you say. "The stockings dried." She looks at your dry stockings for a moment, then at the window, where the snow is visible through the oiled cloth as a shifting of white. "The thatch held through this morning," she says. "Yes. When it stops, we'll need to clear the path." "I know." She hands you the bowl. You eat the pottage again. Third bowl of the day, grain and pea and salt pork. The same pottage that has been on the fire since dawn, receiving additions throughout the day, warming and rewarming, never quite emptying. The pottage pot in January is always on. It is the continuous project of the house. Agnes is asleep on the floor, her back against Brownie's front legs. The goat has apparently decided this arrangement is acceptable and has settled her chin near Agnes's head. Agnes's face is completely relaxed in the deep way children sleep, one hand still holding the piece of cleaned fleece she was working on when sleep took her. The snow falls outside without sound. I want to stop here, in the afternoon of this January day, and say something about what this life is that we haven't said yet, because I've spent this morning in the register of emergencies. Fire out, relight it, warm the chickens, chop wood, repair the thatch, clear the ditch, wet feet. Each one addressed, each one giving way to the next. And that's accurate. January in 1247 is a sequence of managed emergencies, but it's not all it is. The people of Ashfield in this January are not in constant conscious suffering, the same way you, in your modern house with central heating and your refrigerator stocked, are not in constant conscious gratitude for your warmth and food. You just live inside it. These people just live inside their life. The cold is the cold. It's uncomfortable and dangerous when it reaches extremes. But they've been cold before and they know how to be cold. They have techniques, knowledge and community. The cold is a problem they know how to address. Not always, not completely, but they are not helpless inside it. And the warmth, the fire warmth, the pottage warmth, the dry stocking warmth, is felt with the immediacy that only comes from earning it. The fire after the ditch work is different from any fire a person has who has never been in a frozen ditch. The warmth is specific and known and valued in the way things are valued when you've understood their absence. Your life in Ashfield in January 1247 is not comfortable, but it is yours. The fire crackles, the spindle clacks, the snow falls outside. Your mother adds a piece of wood to the fire, chosen with the care she brings to all resource decisions, checking its weight, its density, where it'll sit in the fire to burn slowly rather than fast. She sets it at the back of the fire ring where the heat is most consistent. She turns to the loom. The loom is against the east wall, the wall you repaired this morning, the wall that is now, thanks to the new thatch, slightly less cold and slightly less damp than it was at dawn. The shuttle moves back and forth in your mother's hands, click-clack, click-clack, the weft thread building up slowly between the warp threads, the cloth becoming. She'll weave until the light fails, which in January means not very long. The cloth on the loom will become something. A cloak, possibly. Maybe a blanket, maybe something to trade in Lincoln in spring. Cloth is warmth in future tense. Your mother is weaving January into something warmer. You check on Agnes, still asleep against the goat. Brownie's eyes are half closed, not asleep but resting, the goat's warm sides rising and falling with slow breaths. You can feel the warmth from the two of them from 2 feet away, the combined body heat of a child and a goat. Not nothing, genuinely something. The warmth that's been coming off these animals all night and all day while the fire fought its battle in the centre of the room. This is the thing about the animals in the house. You know it as normal because you've always known it. 2 goats and 4 chickens sharing your space in winter. This is not the absolute bottom of desperation, though it's not comfortable in the modern sense. It's deliberate. It's practical. A goat produces heat. It produces heat continuously, without fuel, without tending, simply by being alive, by having a warm body that radiates warmth into whatever space it occupies. In thermal terms, a full-grown goat is approximately equivalent to a small supplementary fire. 2 goats and 4 chickens contribute measurably to the temperature of this room. People understood this and built for it. In Scandinavia, farmhouses were designed in long buildings with living quarters and animal byre sharing a wall, the animal heat coming through the wall and warming the human side. The integration was architectural, deliberate, planned. In your house, the animals are simply in the same room, behind the hurdle, but in the same air. The air knows no barriers. The warmth they make mixes with the fire's warmth, and the room is warmer than it would be without them. The smell is the price of the arrangement. You have never in your life known a house without the smell of animals. The smell is part of what home smells like. You notice it only when it changes. In the brief mild spells when the goats can be outside for a few hours, the house smells emptier. Absent of something. An absence that might be called freshness by someone from outside, but that to you just smells like something missing. The snow outside is steady now. The flat light through the window cloth has taken on the grey-white uniformity of full snowfall, a light that doesn't come from any particular direction, that comes from everywhere and nowhere at once. Thomas Millward will have stopped his ice clearing at the mill pond. The tracks between the houses are filling in. The hedgerows are taking their white caps. The church roof is already deep in it, the old grey stone invisible under white. Your father, 3 miles north in the Lord's byre, will know it's snowing. He'll pull his blanket tighter in the cold straw. The oxen will be breathing great plumes of warm ox breath into the cold byre air, and those plumes will mean the temperature in the byre is several degrees warmer than outside, and your father will be near the oxen for that reason, not just because they need attending, but because they are warm and warmth matters, and this is how you survive things. The afternoon pottage is ready. Your mother stirs it with the long wooden spoon worn smooth at the end. She's added more this time, a different addition. A half-handful of dried herbs from the bundles overhead, rosemary, something else you can't name, that go into the pottage in the last few minutes and release their smell into the steam. The steam from the pottage rises into the room and mixes with the smoke smell and the animal smell and the herb smell and makes something that is just... It's the smell of January supper in Ashfield in 1247. It's the smell of having managed through the day, of having fought the cold for 8 hours and being briefly winning. Agnes wakes to the smell. She opens her eyes and finds herself against a goat, and looks up at Brownie with a calm acceptance of someone who went to sleep against a goat, and is therefore not surprised to wake against one. She sits up. Fleece in her hair. You pick it out. She lets you. Is it dinner? She asks. Almost, your mother says. Agnes comes to the fire and holds out her hands. Her hands are small and cold, and her fingers are red at the tips. She holds them toward the heat with the seriousness of someone attending to an important task. The fire warms them. The redness at the tips fades to pink. Dinner is pottage. It is always pottage. But your mother has salted it from the barrel with a generosity that says today was a hard enough day to deserve it, and the salt goes through the grain and peas and makes the whole thing more than it was. You eat it from wooden bowls, the three of you, sitting in the firelight while outside the snow keeps falling. The snow is a fact now, a significant fact. Tomorrow there will be clearing to do, paths dug out, the animals' water attending, the woodpile overhang checked that it's holding under the weight. The Lord's road to the east field will need clearing before the reeve decides it needs clearing and assigns someone to do it. Tomorrow will be cold in the specific way that deep snow makes cold. Colder on the surface, but oddly, almost comfortingly quieter. Tonight the snow is just falling. Agnes falls asleep over her bowl, which she does without warning. One moment upright, the next tilted, caught by your mother who moves without looking. The reflexive catch of a mother who has watched a small person fall toward the floor many times. She carries Agnes to the mattress and tucks the doubled blankets around her. The blanket over her face the way Agnes likes it, the way you all sleep in deep winter. Agnes makes a small sound that isn't quite a word, and pulls the blanket tighter and is gone. Your mother comes back to the fire. You and she sit on either side of it. The fire talks between you. The fire says, still going, still burning, still here. The stones say, warm now, finally warm. The thatch on the east wall will do the winter, she says. I think so. Your father will check it when he's back. When will that be? She looks at the fire. When the ground softens, when the oxen need less. Could be a week. Could be a month, she says. Quiet. Just the facts. She picks up the spindle again. You watch her. The spindle drops and rises in the firelight. The thread forms in the moving air between her hands, thin and even and strong, pulled from the roving on the distaff by fingers that know exactly how hard to pull and at what angle, knowledge that lives entirely in the hands and nowhere else. Maud will send peas, you say. Your mother says nothing for a moment. Then, good. Simple. Accepting the gift without the discussion of needing or not needing it. She spins. You're going to check the fire before you sleep. Do it properly this time. Push the coals together and add the night piece of peat that will burn slowly through the dark hours, keeping coals alive under its ash, so that tomorrow morning there will be something to work with, so that tomorrow morning will not be this morning. Before you do that, you're going to follow Maud's instruction. You're going to get dry straw from the pile in the corner and spread it under the mattress, a good layer, before you lay the mattress back on top. 2 inches of trapped air. The same principle as the doubled mittens, the same principle as the stuffed coverlet, the principle your grandmother knew and Maud knows, and that you are now adding to the things your hands know. Before the straw, before the fire banking, you sit with your feet near the fire and look at your hands. The split on the index finger has stopped bleeding. It's tight now. The skin drawn around it the way skin draws around a cold injury, slightly shiny, slightly tender. You rub a little goose fat into it from the small pot your mother keeps near the fire. The fat is warm from sitting near the fire all day. It goes into the split and the skin eases. The cold is not done. Maud said so. January has 2 weeks left, and then February, which is worse. The Raysack is 3 weeks from empty. There are calculations your mother is doing that you can see on her face when she thinks you're not watching. The barrel, The sack, the root vegetables in the corner, the days between now and the first spring market at Lincoln. She's doing the arithmetic of survival, and she doesn't share it because sharing it with the 12-year-old would be sharing a weight she has chosen to carry without help. You are learning, though. You are learning what the weight looks like. The spindle drops, rises. Outside, the snow keeps coming down in the dark. You go to the straw pile and carry an armful to the mattress. Spread it under, a layer thick enough that it shifts and settles with a soft sound when you press your hand into it. Then the mattress on top. The mattress sits differently now, slightly higher, slightly less rigid. You press down on it and feel the straw give beneath, the air trapped in the dry grass, the insulating principle working before you've even lain down. Then the fire, the night configuration, smaller, quieter, the big flame brought down, the coals pushed into a close compact mass that burns slowly and keeps each other warm. The peat piece, thick and dense, set carefully in the centre of the coals where it will catch and hold through the night hours, burning without flames, burning from the inside out, the deep red glow of something combusting at its heart rather than its surface. A fire banked on good peat will survive 8 hours. In the morning, under the ash, coals, live coals. Start those with kindling and you're going in minutes, not the whole cold process of this morning. You'll not have this morning again, not if you tend it right. The fire accepts the peat, settles around it. The flames reduce to a low blue-edged glow and then quieter, deeper, the coals doing their slow work. You check the chickens. 4 of them, asleep on the perch, puffed. Fine. You check the goats. Brownie opens one eye and looks at you with the mild accusation of someone who has been woken unnecessarily and is documenting the fact. Sorry, you say. She doesn't respond. The other goat is already asleep. You climb under the blanket. The straw under the mattress makes a soft settling sound. The mattress is different. Warmer, or the possibility of warmer. The 2-inch gap doing its work between you and the cold earth. The blanket over your shoulders, then pulled higher, then over your chin, then finally over your mouth and nose. Your own breath, trapped, warm immediately. The small warm pocket of air around your face, yours and no one else's, the private warmth of just breathing in the right direction. Outside, the snow. Inside, the fire. Your mother still at the spindle. She'll be there for another hour. She'll tend the fire at midnight, checking the peat, deciding whether it needs attending. She'll do this the way Maud does it, by the air temperature and the sound of the burning, by the knowledge in her body that has survived every January of her life so far. She will keep the fire. Someone always keeps the fire. Every hour of warmth in this house tonight is an hour your mother will spend aware. You understand this partially, the way 12 understands adult work, knowing it exists, not fully knowing what it costs. You'll understand it better in 10 years. Tomorrow you'll wake and check the fire before it goes cold and carry the goat's water and clear the snow from the path and whatever Thomas Reeve has on his list. Tomorrow will be January again, the same January, the continuing January, 28 more days of this before February, which is worse. But tonight the peat is banked. The straw is under you. Your feet are in dry, warm stockings. The blanket is over your face and your breath is warm and your mother is spinning in the firelight. You are warm enough. Not Lord's feather bed warm. Not 21st century central heating warm. Warm enough. The specific warmth of someone who has worked hard enough to earn it and built enough of it to last the night. Your eyes are heavy. The day pulls at you, which is what a day's hard work does. It pulls you down toward sleep with a steady, undeniable gravity, a physical certainty. Your shoulders, still faintly warm from the axe work, ache in the good way. Your feet are just feet, present and warm, not the wooden blocks of the afternoon. Your hands are still, the split on the finger healing in the dark. The fire breathes, the spindle drops. Agnes breathes, somewhere under her blankets. The goats breathe. The snow falls outside, still and quiet and comprehensive, covering the frozen track, the mill pond, the east field where you cleared the ditch, the dead elm you cut this morning, the whole village of Ashfield in its flat white patience. All of it covered, all of it quiet. You think about the things that stayed warm today. The fire you rebuilt before dawn, the chickens you warmed against your chest, the dry straw under the mattress, the goose fat in the split on your finger, the doubled mittens on the ditch bank, the hot pottage before you went out. Small choices, each one. Small pieces of knowledge, each one small, accumulated, working together. Maud taught you things today. But Maud's things were your grandmother's things and your grandmother's mother's things, the same chain going back through every winter in Lincolnshire, every cold house and every person who woke before dawn and made the fire again. The knowledge passed through hands, through demonstration, through the quiet insistence that these things matter because they keep you alive. The chain is very long. You think about the straw under the mattress, the doubled mittens your grandmother made. The principle is the same thing. Layers, air, insulation. Your grandmother knew it. Maud knows it. You know it now. Tomorrow you'll know it in your hands. Centuries will pass. The village will be there and not be there. These specific houses, the wattle and daub walls, the thatched roofs, the beaten earth floors, will fall and be rebuilt and fall again, the materials returning to the soil they came from. But the ridge and furrow patterns of the strip fields your family works, those will last. You can still see them, 800 years from now, from the air over Lincolnshire. The marks your family and your neighbours made in the earth, still there, still legible. The land remembers. The cold will be solved. Not the cold itself. January in Lincolnshire is still January. But the problem of cold inside houses will be solved by glass and insulation and pipes carrying hot water, and machines that keep temperature constant without wood or fire, or anyone waking at midnight to check. The fire pit in the centre of the room will become unnecessary, replaced by invisible systems in the walls. And somewhere in that transformation, the knowledge will go with the necessity, the knowledge of how to read a fire by its sound in the dark, the knowledge of how long a peat piece burns and what it looks and smells like when it's done, the knowledge of doubled mittens and air gaps and dry straw and why you never let your feet stay wet, the knowledge that the goat in the corner is keeping you warm, the knowledge of what the sky smells like an hour before snow. Maud knows all of it. Her mother knew it. Her mother's mother, back and back through cold winters in cold houses, all the people who woke in the cold and made the fire again and shared what they knew with someone smaller who was watching. The chain is broken now, but you are on it. You're on it tonight, in the warmth you made, in the knowledge you're learning, in the dry warm stockings and the straw under the mattress and the peat that's burning slowly in the fire pit while your mother watches. The spindle drops, the fire breathes, your breath is warm under the blanket. Let the boundary between waking and sleeping do what it does, which is dissolve. Let the sounds of the room, the fire, the spindle, the slow breathing of the goats, become the sounds of the inside of sleep, which is also warm, which is also moving, which is also a place where the cold can't find you. Let your hands be heavy. Let your feet be just feet. Let January do what January does outside, cold and dark and patient and real, while inside the fire does what the fire does, and your mother does what your mother does, and the warmth you made today does what warmth does when it's properly built. It holds. You've earned this. Take it. The warmth you made in the cold, in the dark, in 1247. The fire. The fire. The fire. Good night. The night does not pass without incident. You don't know this when you fall asleep, because you're asleep when it happens, which is the point. The incident happens in the part of the night that belongs to the fire, and your mother, and the cold and the dark. The part that adults manage while children sleep. The part of the night that children only know about the next morning when the evidence has been tidied away. But here is what happens. At some point in the deep middle of the night, the 3rd or 4th hour, when the fire is at its lowest, when the peat has burned most of the way through, but still has coals beneath it, when the temperature in the room has dropped to its coldest point of the whole night, at that point your mother gets up. She gets up the way she always gets up at midnight, not suddenly, not with effort, just a smooth transition from lying to sitting to standing, her body knowing its time before her mind has fully engaged. She goes to the fire, she kneels beside it and reads it in the dark the way a shepherd reads a flock, by presence, by sound, by the particular quality of what she can and can't see. The peat is mostly ash now, but underneath the ash, if she leans close and blows gently, they're still red, still alive. She adds a small piece of wood, not a large piece. A large piece now would smother rather than revive. A piece the thickness of her wrist, placed carefully over the glowing peat ash, bridging the coal centre. The fire accepts it slowly, takes its time. Your mother sits beside it in the dark and waits with the patience of someone who has learned that patience and fire management are the same skill. The wood catches. She adds another, slightly larger. The fire comes back to itself. Not the evening's fire, not the morning's fire. The middle of the night fire, modest and purposeful. Enough to keep the room's temperature from falling further. Enough to maintain the coals through to morning. She sits beside it for a few minutes. In the dark, in the quiet, with the snow still falling outside and the goats breathing their slow goat breaths and all 3 of her children asleep. Agnes against the blanket, you under yours. She sits beside the fire and is alone with it in a way she is not alone with anything during the day. This is her January. Not just the managing of resources, the calculation of flour sacks and peat piles. Also this, the midnight fire, the private fire, the fire she keeps that no one knows she keeps, that everyone benefits from without knowing the benefit is maintained, that would go out and take the night's warmth with it if she didn't get up and attend to it. You don't know this when you wake in the morning, but you will, someday. You wake to the bells, not the pre-dawn dark of yesterday. Later, the snow-muffled bells of the church, already striking something, though the snow absorbs so much of the sound that you can't tell if it's 2 strikes or 3 or 4. The light through the smoke gap in the thatch is white, not grey, white. The specific white of morning reflected from a snow-covered world, brighter than ordinary January morning, the light coming in from every direction at once rather than from the sky alone. You sit up. The room is warm, actually warm, not perfectly warm, Not comfortable by any standard that doesn't involve comparison to yesterday morning, but warm. The fire is going properly. Your mother added to it this morning. There are flames and there are coals, and the peat from the night is mostly ash, but the ash is warm, the stones are warm, the room is warm. You got up yesterday to 45 degrees and dead fire. This morning you get up to something more like 55, 58 with a going fire. The peat worked. You remember setting it. The careful placement in the centre of the coals, the deliberate positioning, the decision your hands made. It worked. Agnes is awake before you. She's standing at the small window, one corner of the oiled cloth pulled back so she can look outside with one eye, and what she sees clearly satisfies her because her face has the expression of profound approval that 5-year-olds bring to things that meet expectations. "Snow," she announces. "I know," you say. "A lot of snow." You go to look. A lot of snow is accurate. The yard is transformed. The irregular mud and frost of yesterday has become a uniform surface of white, smooth where nothing has touched it. The edges of things, the wood pile, the fence posts, the apple tree, rounded and softened by their white coverings. The path from the door to the gate is invisible, just white. The gate itself has a cap of snow on its top rail 6 inches thick. The village beyond the gate has changed into something almost beautiful. Almost is doing a lot of work in that sentence. A snow-covered medieval village in January is visually pretty and practically terrible, and the prettiness and the terribleness are not in conflict, but are the same thing seen from different angles. The smoothness of the snow is visually pleasing, and is also the reason the path you need to walk is currently invisible. The whiteness reflects the morning light in a way that makes everything seem bright and open, and is also the symptom of a storm that has made the road to Lincoln impassable, and will keep your family inside for however long it takes to work through. But the way it looks, right now, in the early morning, with the church roof white and the hedgerows white and the smoke from Maud's fire and your neighbours' fires rising in clean dark columns against the white sky, it looks like something worth stopping for. You stop for 2 seconds. Then you go get the wooden snow shovel from the yard. The first job is the door. Snow has drifted against the base of the door during the night, and while it didn't come in, your mother has stuffed the gap at the base of the door with a length of old rope, which is the medieval draft excluder. Effective and simple. It has to be moved before the door can open properly. You push the door and feel the resistance of the packed snow and lean into it, and the door gives slowly and the snow falls away from the outer edge. Cold air. The cold of this morning is different from yesterday's cold. Yesterday was iron cold, dry and sharp, the cold of below freezing air with no moisture in it. Today, after the snow, is wet cold, slightly less cold in absolute terms. Snow falls when the temperature is closer to freezing than deeply below it, but wetter, the air full of the moisture the snow released as it fell, and wet cold, as your feet discovered yesterday in the ditch, has a way of getting through things that dry cold doesn't. You start shoveling the path. The shovel is wooden, wide and flat. A purpose-built snow tool that lives under the overhang in winter and is one of those objects that has exactly one use, and is, during that one use, irreplaceable. You push it under the snow rather than lifting. Pushing uses your whole body and is faster than lifting each heavy load. The snow goes to the sides of the path, building up in rough walls that will compact and last for days if more snow doesn't fall to cover them. The work is cold on your hands and warm on your back. Your breath comes in white clouds that the light makes visible as white against white, only the movement distinguishing them from the surrounding air. Down the track you can see others doing the same, the village collectively shoveling itself out, each person in front of their own section of path. The mutual unspoken work that turns a village back into a connected place after a night that disconnected it. Thomas Millward's wife, a solid, practical woman named Edith, is shoveling in front of the mill. She works with an economy of motion that says she's done this many times and is not wasting any effort. She looks up as you work past her section of track and nods. "Fire all right?" she calls. "Last night was fine," you say. "The peat." "Good for peat," she says and goes back to shoveling. You clear your section and go back inside. Agnes needs her face washed. The water in the bucket has frozen again, same skin of thin ice as yesterday, and you break it with the ladle and get a little water into the washing cloth and bring it to Agnes, who accepts the process of face washing with dignified resignation. The goats need water. The small clay pot of water you usually keep for them has frozen solid overnight. You carry it to the fire and set it near the flame, not on the flame. Clay pots crack if you put them directly on fire from cold and wait for it to melt. This takes a few minutes. You watch the ice release from the sides of the pot first, the way ice always melts at the edges before the centre, and then the whole block shifts and the water is liquid and you carry it to Brownie. Brownie drinks it with the focused commitment of an animal that has been waiting several hours for this. The unnamed goat waits its turn with philosophical patience. Your mother has already restarted the pottage pot. You can smell it. The morning's grain smell mixing with the wood smoke and the cold air coming in through the smoke gap. She has the pot hanging at its usual height, the chain adjusted so it sits at the right distance from the flames. She looks at you when you come back in from the goat water. "The path is clear," she says, "to the gate." The church track will need clearing. You haven't been to church since before the ditch work and the snow. In ordinary January you go most mornings for the brief early service. Brief being relative, Father Edmund's concept of brevity having its own particular scale. And the not going has been noticed, or will be noticed, when your next appearance comes with 2 days' gap attached. "I'll go this morning," you say. "We'll all go," your mother says. She says this in a way that is not about faith, or not entirely about faith. Going to the church is also the one time in the week when the whole village is in the same place. The one time information moves in both directions at once, not filtered through the reeve or the Lord's household, but simply transmitted through proximity, through 30 people standing close enough to hear what the others say. What has happened in your corners of this village? Which child is sick? Which roof needs help? Which household is shorter on grain than they should be? Who has something to share and who needs it shared with them? All of this becomes known in the church, or at the door of the church, or on the path to and from the church. Information is warmth in its own way. You all go to the church. The church path has been cleared by the time you arrive. Someone has been and shovelled it. Probably old Geoffrey, who lives nearest and takes this particular custodial responsibility as seriously as if it were written in his tenure agreement, which it may actually be. The church door stands open, a significant commitment to access over comfort, given that the temperature inside the church is, as always in January, approximately the temperature of a cave. Father Edmund's brazier of charcoal is already burning near the altar. You can see the faint orange glow of it from the door. The brazier warms approximately the space Father Edmund stands in, and possibly the first 2 feet of air around him, and nowhere else. The congregation files in and immediately begins generating its collective heat. This is physics. 30 human bodies, each producing approximately the same thermal energy as a 100-watt light bulb, crowded into a small stone room. In 30 minutes, the combined output of 30 people breathing and existing in a cold stone space makes a measurable difference to the air temperature. Not comfortable warm, but measurably different from cold. You stand between your mother and Agnes. Agnes has been wrapped in everything available, and additionally in a length of cloth your mother has tied around her shoulders in a way that was once a better garment and is now a useful shawl. Agnes stands between the adults and absorbs the warmth from both of them simultaneously with the unconscious expertise of small children everywhere. Father Edmund conducts the service with the brisk efficiency of a man who is cold and has made his peace with the cold without enjoying it. He is from somewhere in France, as you know, and his relationship with English winter has always had a quality of personal betrayal to it, as if the cold is doing something to him specifically rather than to everyone equally. His prayers in January have a slightly clipped quality, each word enunciated with precision, the brevity of someone who has decided that God will understand the situation. You stand and kneel and stand in the ritual sequence, the cold stone floor conducting cold up through your shoes each time you kneel, your knees reporting the floor's temperature directly, and you pray the prayers you know, and you listen to the ones you don't fully understand, and you watch the light through the small east window change as the morning develops outside. The service ends. The congregation moves to the church door, which is where the real service happens in a village like Ashfield. The ritual service gets the bodies into the same space. The door service gets the information moving. You stand near your mother and listen. Edith Millwood, the miller's wife, is telling someone about the mill wheel. The ice is bad this year, worse than 2 years ago, though not as bad as the great freeze of 4 years ago, when the wheel cracked and Thomas had to send to Lincoln for a new pin, and it cost them. She doesn't say exactly what it cost them, but her face does the work. An older man, whose name you don't know well, is talking to the reeve about the Southfield hedge. The same hedge the reeve mentioned to you yesterday. There's a section near the old oak that needs more than laying, needs new planting, new growth before it'll be any good as a boundary. This will take years. The hedge has been neglected. 2 women are talking in low voices about something at the far end of the village. You catch fragments. A name you know, Widow Hildy, who lives alone, whose husband died 2 winters ago. Something about the condition of her house. Something about the roof. You nudge your mother. She has already heard. You watch her face do its calculation, not openly, not in the way calculations are displayed. Quietly. She weighs something against something else. Then she turns to Agnes. "Stay with Goodwife Maud," she says, and this isn't a question. Agnes looks between you and your mother, reading the situation with the accuracy small children bring to reading adult faces when something matters. "All right," she says. Your mother finds Maud at the edge of the group and says something in a low voice, and Maud looks toward the far end of the village and nods once, the same small nod she used about the peas, and Agnes takes Maud's hand without being told. Then you and your mother are walking. Widow Hilda's house is at the south end of the village, past where the track bends and the house is thin out, past Martin's house and the little hay byre that sits between Martin's garden and the field edge. Hilda's house is small even by Ashfield standards, A single room like yours, but shorter and narrower, built when her husband was living and maintained less well since. The garden fence on the south side has a lean to it that says something has been pushing it that way for some time. The door is closed. Your mother knocks. A specific knock, not Thomas Reeve's knock. A softer 3 taps. Silence. She knocks again. "Hilda," she calls. Not loudly, just clearly. A sound from inside. Not a voice exactly. More a shifting, a rustling. Your mother lifts the latch and opens the door. The cold that comes out is remarkable. Not remarkable that it exists. The cold is everywhere today. But remarkable that it's the same temperature inside as outside. Not warmer inside. The same. No fire. The fire pit is grey ash. Not the cold ash of this morning, which was 8 hours old. Ash that has been cold for longer than that. Ash that has been cold for a day, maybe more. Ash that smells of nothing at all, not even the wet ash smell of recent cold, but just the thin, dead mineral smell of something that burned a long time ago. Widow Hilda is in her bed. She's wrapped in what looks like every piece of cloth she owns, blankets and a cloak and something else, some layer of rough material that might have been a sack once. She's lying on her side facing the dead fire pit, and she's awake. Her eyes are open, they found you when the door opened, but she's been lying there long enough that the stiffness of her body when she tries to sit up is not morning stiffness. It's longer than morning. Your mother is beside her before you've finished reading the room. "How long?" your mother says. No preamble, just the question. "Yesterday," Hilda says. Her voice is slow, slightly thick. The particular slowness of a body that has been cold long enough to start pulling resources inward, away from the parts that aren't essential. "The day before, maybe. I couldn't get it going." She pauses. "My hands." She shows her hands. Her hands are bad. Not frostbitten in the dramatic blue-black way, but cracked far beyond what yours were this morning. The knuckles open and weeping, the skin across the backs of them hard and tight and painful looking. These are hands that have been trying to work cold fire-starting tools in cold air for days. These are hands that have been failing. Without the use of your hands, you cannot start a fire. Without a fire in January in Ashfield, you stay in your cold house wrapped in everything you own, and wait, and hope someone notices. The house is cold enough that you can see your breath. Your mother does not waste time commenting on the situation or expressing the appropriate degree of concern. These are things you feel. She probably feels them, but she uses the feeling the way you use a sharpened axe. To do the work, not to display. She turns to you. "Wood," she says. Hilda's wood pile is under a lean-to outside the back wall. You go to it. The pile is low. Lower than yours was this morning, substantially lower. But there's something. Enough for today. You bring armfuls back, 3 trips, and build a pile near the fire pit. The fire-starting things are by the pit. Flint, striker, tinder pot. You open the tinder pot and look at the tinder. Damp, not soaked, but the tinder has absorbed moisture from the cold air and from the condensation in the house, and it's soft rather than dry. And soft tinder doesn't catch a spark the way dry tinder does. You don't say this to your mother. You take a small pinch of the tinder and hold it near the warmth of your hands, pressing it between your palms, the body heat doing the small work of driving out a little moisture. Meanwhile, your mother has found a candle stub, a short piece of tallow candle barely an inch long kept on the shelf with a flint of its own, and she lights this from a piece of very dry bark she carries in her own tinder pouch. Bark so dry it catches on the second try, and the candle flame is small and certain, and she carries it to the fire pit and holds it under your prepared tinder nest. The tinder catches. The fire follows. It takes longer than usual. The kindling is slightly damp too, and the first 2 sticks you add kill the flame rather than feeding it. But you know this. You pull them back, you add only the smallest, driest sticks you can find, and the fire rebuilds, and by the time the first proper piece of wood is on and burning, 10 minutes have passed and the fire pit is genuinely alive. Your mother sits beside it for a moment, feeding it, building it up with the same deliberate pacing she uses at home. This fire needs to get warm quickly. The room needs to cross the threshold from cold as outside to at least trying as fast as possible. You look at Hilda. She's sat up now, slowly, and is watching the fire with an expression that is not relief exactly, but is something close to it. Something that has decided not to perform emotion but is feeling it privately, behind her face. Her hands are against her chest. She's holding them there the way you held the sick chicken, close to the warmth of her own body, trying to give them something. "I'll get Maud," you say. "You go." Maud is at the church door still, or was... You find her halfway down the track toward home, Agnes in tow, and when you say just Hilda, and fire was out, Maud's face settles into the particular expression of someone who thought this was coming, and has already decided what to do about it. She sends Agnes back to your house with simple instructions. Put water on the fire and wait. Agnes goes with a serious air of someone who's been given an important role and knows it. You and Sword walk to Hilda's house. Maud looks at the room. She looks at Hilda. She sits down beside the fire and takes Hilda's hands in her own without asking. The same directness she used on your feet yesterday, and she examines them. "This has been building for weeks," she says, not accusingly, just accurately. "I've managed," Hilda says. "You were managing," Maud says. "Managing ended yesterday when you couldn't start the fire." Hilda says nothing. Maud goes to her own coat and takes out a small crock sealed with cloth and wax. She pries off the seal, and inside is what you recognise as goose fat, but darker and smelling of something additional, some herb she's added to it. She takes Hilda's hands and works this into the cracks, with a thoroughness that takes several minutes, Hilda wincing at the parts where the skin has split deepest. "Don't use the hands for rough work for 2 days," Maud says. "If they're not better by the end of the week, I'll do it again." "I have to. Don't use the hands," Maud says again. The same tone as your mother giving directions. The tone that ends the sentence. Your mother, meanwhile, is doing several things simultaneously that you're watching with a particular attention, because she's not explaining what she's doing. She's just doing it. And the explanation lives in the actions themselves if you're watching carefully. She finds the grain sack in the corner. She checks the sack. How much? What kind? The smell and feel of it. She finds the salt pork, or what Hilda has, which is a piece substantially smaller than what you have at home. She finds the water bucket frozen solid, not just a skim of ice, but solid all the way through. The water that should be in there absent turned to a solid cylinder of ice that has to be broken up and melted. She picks up a stone from beside the fire pit, one of the ring stones, and walks outside with it and comes back in with a piece of the ice from the bucket she's broken off with the stone. She puts this near the fire to melt. She is inventorying what Hilda has, figuring the distance between what's here and what's needed, doing the arithmetic that her face does quietly, the same arithmetic she does at home about their own stores. Your mother looks at you. Not a direction, a look that means, you see what I see. You see what she sees. Hilda will be all right today. The fire is going. Maud is here. Your mother is here. But the woodpile is not all right. The food stores are not all right. And the house itself, now that the fire is going and the room is warming slightly, you can see things that the cold and the dark were hiding before. There's a dark patch on the east wall where moisture has been coming in for some time, not through the thatch, which looks solid enough, but through a gap lower down, where the wattle and daub has developed a crack, and the crack has been admitting cold air and cold moisture for weeks. The wall around the crack is darker than it should be, soft-looking. Hilda's house is cold because a fire was out, but it was already colder than it should have been because of the wall. Your mother and Maud exchange a look over Hilda's head. It's a quick look, the look of people who communicate efficiently because they've known each other for decades. Something is decided in it. Something about plans that will happen without being stated in front of Hilda, because stating them would involve saying things about the state of Hilda's house and Hilda's stores that would require Hilda to acknowledge them, and perhaps she's not ready for that. The fire is established. Maud stays. You and your mother walk home. The track between Hilda's house and yours is already showing the morning's traffic. Footprints in the snow. The record of who has been where since the snow stopped. Your own path to the church and back layered over the marks from yesterday, and making a small archaeology of this morning. You walk in your own footprints where they exist and make new ones where they don't. Her wall, you say. Yes, your mother says. Who fixes it? Your mother is quiet for a few steps. People do, she says. You think about this as you walk. There's no formal structure for this, no organisation with a name that you would give it. There's just the village. There's just the fact that Hilda's wall needs fixing and it's January and people fix things in January when they know about them. Thomas Reeve might assign the work or might not. The Reeves list of obligations runs through what the Lord requires, not through what widows need. This is separate from the Lord's obligations. This is the village looking after itself. You've seen it before. After the flood 2 years ago that took out Martin's garden wall, it was rebuilt in a day by people who just showed up with tools. No announcement, no organising, just. The wall needed to be rebuilt, and so people rebuilt it. Who fixes Hilda's wall? People do. By afternoon, you know, it's you and Thomas Millward's oldest son and a man named Will the carpenter, who is not your name's twin but your trade's, who handles wood in this village the way your mother handles thread. 3 of you with plaster and new wattle from the hedge-trimming pile, while Maud and your mother keep the fire going inside and Hilda sits near it and rests her hands. The wall repair is cold outside work. The plaster, a mixture of clay and sand and water, mixed in a bucket with cold hands, sets differently in winter than in summer. It needs to be protected from freezing while it dries, which means the fire inside needs to stay hot, which means the wood pile gets used faster than you'd like. But you work it into the gap and press the new wattle sections into place, and by the time the afternoon light has turned the snow from white to blue shadow, the wall is closed. The cold air that was coming in through that gap stopped. Not a large thing, just a gap in a wall. But a gap in a wall in January is a direct channel from the outside cold to the inside space, and stopping that channel is stopping a small constant drain of warmth from a room that cannot afford to lose it. Will the carpenter looks at his work and makes the sound that craftsmen make when they're satisfied, but not completely satisfied. His hands are rough and precise, and he moves plaster into gaps the way your mother moves thread onto the distaff, automatically, correctly, from a place where the skill lives in the hands rather than the head. She'll need it done properly in spring, he says, with proper lime mortar. She knows, you say. Good. He packs his tools. Good firekeeping tonight. Keep it banked. Don't let it get lower than the stones. He walks away. His breath makes white clouds in the blue shadow afternoon. You go home. Your home fire has been managed by Agnes, who took her instructions seriously, who's added 2 pieces of wood from the pile at intervals that your mother deemed acceptable when she returned briefly at midday, who's now sitting beside the fire with Brownie in what appears to be a mutual warmth-sharing arrangement. Agnes looks up when you come in. I kept it, she says. You did, you say. Agnes's face absorbs this information with the satisfaction of a job properly done. You sit beside the fire and let your hands warm. Let me tell you about hands in medieval January, because hands are the specific cost of this kind of life that most people don't think about when they think about cold. You think about freezing to death, or at least I imagine you do, the dramatic end, the blizzard and hypothermia story. But the actual texture of medieval winter cold is not dramatic. It is the split on the index finger. It is the cracked knuckle that reopens every time you make a fist. It is the deep dryness of skin that has been cold and wet and cold again without enough fat to keep it supple. The skin pulling over the knuckle bones tight and dry and eventually giving, and then you work through it. You do the work with cracked hands because the work needs doing, and cracked hands are still hands. You wrap them in goose fat at night and you work through the day, and the cracks heal slightly and open again slightly, and this is the texture of January on the body. Not dramatic, just constant. There are things that help. The goose fat is the main thing. Your grandmother kept geese specifically in part for this, the meat for eating, the fat for the hands, the down for, you think of Maud's coverlet, the down for insulation if you were careful about saving it. The geese were warmth in multiple forms. People who kept bees, not everyone, bees were a substantial investment and required knowledge. People who kept bees had beeswax. Beeswax mixed with a little fat makes something better for cracked skin than plain fat alone. It goes on harder, seals the crack instead of just soothing it. Beeswax costs more than most people in Ashfield spend on anything optional. But the beekeeper at the far end of the North Road sells it in small amounts, and in bad winters the beekeeper does good business from it. There are other things, tallow from the slaughtered animals, the same tallow that makes candles, rubbed into skin. The milk from the goats, in the small amounts the goats produce in winter. Not enough to be a food source this time of year, but a few tablespoons of it rubbed into cracked lips or split skin does something. Medieval people understood, without having a biochemistry for it, that animal fats and milk provided something skin needed in winter that skin couldn't provide itself. They were right. The lipids, the fats, the skin barrier that depends on fats to stay intact. Without fats, the barrier fails. With enough fat regularly applied, the barrier holds. The knowledge was applied without knowing the mechanism, but the knowledge was accurate. You think about this as your hands warm. The split on your finger has closed slightly. The goose fat your mother worked in this morning did something. You can feel the difference between the treated split and the untreated one that opened on your right hand during the morning snow clearing. The new one that stings more because no fat has reached it yet. Your mother comes in from wherever she's been. You didn't track her afternoon. She's been moving between here and Hilda's, and your route through the day didn't have a clear sight on her. And she looks at the fire and the state of the pot and at Agnes and at you and performs the rapid, comprehensive inventory of the situation. that she performs every time she enters the room. Good, she says. The word means several things simultaneously. Good fire, good Agnes, good that you're both here. Good that the wall is done. She ladles pottage into bowls. You eat. This is what days are in medieval January, a sequence of specific physical problems addressed with specific physical solutions. Not abstract, not philosophical. Cold is cold. Fire is fire. The wall gap is a wall gap. Hilda's hands are Hilda's hands. Each thing has a response, and the responses are in the body, and the tools and the materials available, and you do them in the order they present themselves, and the doing is the day. There are no vacations from January. There is no weekend, technically, though Sunday is nominally different. There is no sick day in the sense of a day when the work stops because you're unwell. The work stops when you physically cannot do it, and then someone else does it, and you owe them back when you can. This is the economy of a cold village in January. Each household is a node in a network of informal obligation, and the network holds, imperfectly and constantly, and people survive because of it more often than they survive in spite of it. You eat the pottage. Agnes has also been thinking about things. You can tell the way you can tell when a 5-year-old has been thinking, because the thinking eventually emerges as a question without preamble. Why did Hilda not have a fire, she asks. Her hands, you say. She couldn't start it. Agnes considers the gap between her answer and the full situation, which she has understood without knowing the full vocabulary for it. She considers Hilda's cracked hands. She considers what she did today, keeping the fire going, which she did correctly and successfully. She's 5 years old and she kept the fire going. She should ask someone, Agnes says. She should, your mother says. People should ask. A pause in which everyone present understands that asking is harder than it sounds, that Hilda's pride and her isolation, and the 2 years since her husband died, and the progressive cold, and the cracking hands and the depleted woodpile all add up to something that makes asking feel like defeat, even when not asking is worse. People should ask, your mother says again quietly, to herself as much as to you. Outside, the blue shadow has become dark. January dark comes early and completely, not the gradual blue-grey darkening of summer evenings, but a hard transition, the world going from afternoon to night with a directness that is almost rude. By 4 in the afternoon the dark is serious. By 5 it's complete. Your mother lights the tallow candle, one candle, the tallow candle stub on its iron holder on the shelf. It gives enough light for close work, for eating, for the basic navigation of the room. Not enough light to read by, if reading were something that happened here. Not enough light to do detailed work. Enough light to be warm by the fire with your family and know where everyone is. The candle is not taken for granted. Tallow candles in 1247 cost something. Every candle burned is a small expense against the household. You don't light extra candles for atmosphere or habit. You light a candle when you need light, and you extinguish it when the fire alone is sufficient. Your mother spins by firelight. The fire is enough light for spinning. The spindle and the roving are in her hands, and the firelight picks out the thread forming between them, amber and warm. She spins in the evening the way she spins in the morning and the afternoon. The same hands, the same motion, the same quiet absorption. Agnes is asleep again. Agnes sleeps the way young children sleep in winter, often deeply, as if her body has calculated that sleep is the most thermally efficient state available and has decided to be in it as much as possible. She's in her blankets, face under, one hand still holding the end of her braid, which she does in sleep and has done since she was 2. You sit with your mother, the fire between you. And the thing about sitting with your mother in the evening in a medieval house in January is there's nothing else. No lamp to read by, no other room to go to, no distraction of the kind you might imagine. It's the fire and the spinning and whatever conversation happens or doesn't happen. The absence of distraction means that what is present is fully present. The fire is fully the fire. The warmth is fully the warmth. You understand, sitting here, why fire had gods, why the hearth had spirits in the stories older than any religion you know. Because the fire isn't furniture. It isn't a convenience. It's the centre of everything, and you know that viscerally. You know it in your skin, and in the cold you felt before the fire was lit this morning, and in the warmth you feel now. The fire is the reason you're alive. The fire is the reason this room exists as a warm room rather than a cold room. The fire is what your mother tends at midnight when you're asleep. The fire deserves its gods. Your mother's spindle drops, rises. You think about tomorrow. Snow clearing if more falls. The hedge laying the Reeve mentioned, which will happen soon, before the ground freezes deeper. The ditch that needed clearing and now is clear. The wood pile that needs replenishing again. Always replenishing. The wood pile the constant background concern of every winter day. And Hilda's house, the wall sealed now, the fire going. Maud will check on her tomorrow. Your mother has not said this out loud, but you know it the way you know things in a village this small. It will happen. Will Hilda be all right, you say? Your mother is quiet for a moment, spinning. She'll be all right this winter, she says. You hear the this winter in that sentence, the weight it carries. She can't stay alone, you say. No, your mother says. What happens? What usually happens, she says. Things arrange themselves or they don't. Someone takes her in, or her daughter comes from Grantham, or she manages better in spring when the work is easier on the hands, she pauses, or she doesn't manage. The fire crackles. You sit with this. The medieval world does not have the infrastructure that would, 8 centuries later, be built to address exactly this kind of situation. There are no social services, no welfare state. There is the church, which in theory has charitable obligations, and in practice distributes what it has, which is sometimes enough and sometimes not. There is the village, which does what it does, show up, fix the wall, bring pottage, send Maud to treat the hands. It's not nothing. It's also not everything. The gap between what it is and what would be needed sits in the room with you now, real and uncomfortable, the way gaps always are. Go to bed, your mother says. You bank the fire, check the chickens, check the goats. The fire banking is better than last night. You've thought about it more. You've placed the night piece of peat with more deliberate attention, and you understand now what you're doing and why in a way you only half understood yesterday. The knowledge is settling into your hands. You climb into the blankets. The straw under the mattress shifts and settles. The blanket over your face, your own warm breath. Outside, no snow falling. The sky has cleared and through the smoke gap you can see, just barely, a few stars at the edge of the opening. Cold clear stars, the kind that only appear when the sky is completely empty of cloud and the air is completely empty of moisture. The kind of stars that mean tomorrow morning will be colder than tonight. The stars have been there all winter, and will be there after winter, and have been there for all the winters anyone can count. Your grandfather's grandfather looked at these stars through a smoke gap in a thatched roof. The stars didn't change. The smoke gap didn't change. The need to bank the fire before sleep didn't change. You're asleep before you finish the thought. The days of January turn. Each day is its own specific challenge and its own specific set of solutions. And the solutions are in the body and the tools and the knowledge keeps growing because January keeps teaching it. You learn things by doing them and by watching them done, and by the times you do them wrong and the times you do them right. And gradually, over the slow turning of January days, the knowledge becomes muscle. The hedge gets laid. You help Thomas the carpenter's cousin, a man who is apparently also named Thomas, which in a village this size creates regular confusion that everyone navigates without particular complaint, because his hands on a hedge are obviously different from your hands on a hedge, and the difference is the 40 years of hedge laying in his body. He shows you how to find the angle in the stem where you can cut without killing, where the living wood will stay alive even after being bent almost horizontal. He shows you how to weave the cut stems through the stakes so the whole thing holds itself. He shows you how to think 3 years ahead. This cut here, this bend there, means in 3 years the hedge will be thick enough to stop a bull and impenetrable enough to stop most weather. You bend a stem wrong and it cracks. Thomas the cousin looks at it, makes the craftsman's sound, then shows you again, his hands over yours on the stem, the angle, the pressure, the gentle persistence that is different from force. Again, he says, you do it again, better. The work is cold and the cold gets into your hands through the mittens in the places where the mittens are worn thin and the stems are wet with snowmelt and the stakes have ice on them that scrapes off onto your fingers when you push them in. Your nose runs continuously in the cold and you wipe it on your sleeve and the sleeve gets stiff from repeated wiping, and you wipe it anyway because there is no alternative that doesn't involve a handkerchief, which is not a thing your family owns. By the end of the day, you've laid a section of the hedge about 30 feet long. Thomas the cousin steps back and looks at it with the specific satisfaction of a craftsman who has done a thing correctly and knows it. It'll hold, he says. Come spring it'll look terrible. Come summer it'll look like hedge. Come the winter after that you won't get through it. You look at it. 12 years old, looking at 30 feet of winter bear woven stems and trying to imagine it in summer, trying to imagine the leaves, the thickness, the impenetrability. You can't quite see it. You have to trust the person whose hands know. Thank you, you say. He makes the dismissive gesture that means this is how things are and requires no thanks. You realize, learning this gesture. You use it sometimes now without thinking. The gesture that means this is the work, and the work is just the work, and we don't need to make a ceremony of it. You go home. Home. The word has been changing in your understanding since the fire went out 3 mornings ago. Not the house specifically. The house is the same house, the same 20 feet by 14 feet of beaten earth and wattle and thatch. But what the house is for has become clearer. The house is the place where the warmth is kept. The house is the project, the daily project, the thing that takes your morning fire starting and your wood chopping and your thatch checking and your mother's midnight tending and Agnes's goat water and all of the small committed acts that add up to warm enough, safe enough, going to make it to spring. The house is warmth maintained against opposition. That's what home is in January 1247 in Ashfield. You push the door open. The smell of pottage and fire and wool and animals and the particular faint sweetness of old dried herbs from the beams, the smell of home. The week after the wall repair and the hedge laying is quieter. No new emergencies or no large ones. The small ones continue. the chicken that was cold again and needed the blanket treatment, the water bucket frozen 3 mornings in a row until you moved it slightly closer to the fire, not so close it evaporates, but close enough to stay liquid through the night, the split on your index finger that finally decided to heal properly, a thin new skin over it, tender to the touch. You go to Hilda's house twice, once with Agnes, who carries a small pot of pottage wrapped in cloth that your mother heated for the journey. Once alone, just to check. Both times Hilda is near the fire, her hands improving. Maud's fat and the rest from rough work has made a difference. And both times she says she's managing, and both times you can see that she is genuinely managing. Better than the day you found her, but not yet fully right. You clean the ashes from the fire pit at home properly, which is a job that builds up and has to be done every week or so. The ash accumulates in the pit, and eventually there's no room for the fire to burn properly. You scoop the ash into a clay pot with a lid. Ash has uses. It's a cleansing agent for washing cloth. Your mother uses it for that, so you never throw it away. And the pit is clean and the fire burns better for it. You learn something from doing this. The ash from peat is different from the ash from wood. Peat ash is finer, paler, has a slightly different smell. The way each material burns is different, and different materials are for different purposes. Wood is for quick heat, getting the room up to temperature. Peat is for the long overnight hold. Dried animal dung, which some households use when wood and peat are scarce, burns hotter than you'd expect but smells and produces different ash again. Each fuel has its character and its uses, and knowing them is knowing how to manage a fire, not just how to have one. One morning, toward the middle of the 2nd week of January, you wake up to something different. You wake up to warmth, genuine warmth. Not fire warm, not the managed warmth of a room fighting cold. Something else. You lie under the blanket and the blanket is warm, not cold. And the air above the blanket when you pull it down is not cold, not the refrigerator air of a fortnight ago. The temperature has lifted, not to spring, not even to what most people would call comfortable, but the January deep freeze has broken, briefly, and the outside temperature has climbed to something near freezing rather than well below it. And that 10-degree change from 15 degrees outside to 32 degrees outside changes everything inside. The fire's job becomes easier. The walls stop conducting cold quite so efficiently. The floor is not frozen earth anymore, but merely cold earth. The water bucket survives the night without a skin of ice. You push the door open, and the air that comes in is cold but not hostile. It has a slight softness to it, a slight moisture, and the snow that covers everything is different this morning. Not the dry powder snow of deep cold, but a wetter, heavier snow with a crust on the top that holds your weight for a step before breaking through, the crust made by the warmer air of last night slightly melting the surface, and then the temperature dropping overnight and refreezing it into a thin, hard layer. The light is different. The sun is visible. Not warm sun. January sun in Lincolnshire is a cold thing. The angle of it too low to add heat. Just light. But visible sun. Actual sun rather than flat white sky. And the light it throws on the snow-covered world makes shadows. Real shadows. The crisp blue shadows of late morning in winter. And those shadows mean the world has direction and dimension again after the directionless, flat light of snowfall. You stand in the door for longer than 2 seconds. You stand there looking at the blue shadows on the white snow and the visible sun, and the smoke from your neighbours' fires rising in clean columns in still air, and the village of Ashfield, Lincolnshire, in winter with the sun on it. and you think, good, that's all. Just good. Agnes appears at your elbow. Son, she says. Son, you confirm. She takes your hand. You let her take your hand and you stand in the door together for a moment that has no particular function in the day's work but exists anyway, the two of you looking at the sun on the snow. The respite doesn't last. 2 days of it. 3. The temperature softens and the snow softens and the paths that were hard frozen become soft and slushy underfoot. A different misery from ice, the kind where every step sinks slightly and comes up with mud on the sole, and the mud is cold and wet and gets everywhere. 3 days of sun and soft snow, and the feeling that something is easing. Then the cold comes back. It always comes back in January. The brief respite is not the end of winter. It's winter taking a breath before the next effort. You know this and you prepare for it. You use the 3 softer days to add to the woodpile, taking advantage of easier conditions to make 2 trips to the forest rather than 1, to check the thatch and the walls for any new damage the snowmelt has created, to check on Hilda and find her substantially better, and to do some of the yard work that the hard freeze made impossible. When the cold returns, you are ahead of it rather than behind. This is the rhythm of managing January. You work the mild days hard so the cold days are survivable. You don't rest in the respite, you use it. Your mother watches you figure this out. She doesn't say anything about it. But you see her watching. The way she watched you start the fire that first morning. The way she watches everything. Assessingly, quietly. Letting you do the learning rather than doing it for you. You are her investment. Not in a cold way. In the way that a person who has knowledge invests it in someone who will need it. Who will carry it forward. Who will someday be the one tending the midnight fire. The 3rd week of January. This is the week Maud mentioned. The 3rd week of January in Lincolnshire is often the coldest. The week when the cumulative frost has worked its way deepest into the ground, and the temperature drops hardest, and the cold has the confidence of something that has been winning for a long time. You wake one morning to a room that is colder than any morning yet. Colder even than the morning the fire went out. Because this morning the fire is going. You banked it correctly. The peat held through the night. There are coals under the ash, and you can feel the heat of them before you've reached the pit. But the fire going makes almost no difference to the room. The cold is so thorough, so deep, so complete, that the fire's warmth vanishes into it like a stone thrown into deep water. The fire burns and the room stays cold because the room has been cold for long enough that the cold is in the walls, in the floor, in every surface that the fire would have to warm before the air temperature could rise. You add wood immediately, more than usual. More than careful management would normally allow. You make a judgment. Today, the fire needs to be larger, needs to be hotter, needs to generate enough heat to overcome the room's stored cold. You'll pay for it from the woodpile, but you'll pay for it consciously, as a decision, not as waste. The fire responds. A larger fire makes more heat. More heat over more time makes a difference to the air temperature. By an hour after dawn, the room is no longer at its worst. Still cold, still challenging, but the worst has been pushed back. Agnes eats her pottage with both hands, as always. She doesn't complain about the cold. She's 5. The world is as it is. The cold is cold, and the fire is fire, and pottage is warm, and these are the parameters of existence. She navigates them without drama. You think, sitting beside the fire on this deepest cold January morning, about what it means to be 12 and learning the things you're learning. Not in an abstract way. You don't think about it abstractly. You're 12. Abstract is not yet fully available, but in the direct way of, I know how to do this now. I know how to start a fire in cold ash. I know about the straw under the mattress and the doubled mittens and the breath under the blanket trick and the peat for overnight and the goose fat for the hands. I know that Agnes kept the fire when I was at the ditch. I know that people fix walls and check on neighbours and show up with pottage. I know that my mother tends the fire at midnight, and I know this because I asked her, eventually directly, and she told me simply and without drama. Yes, every 2 hours it's just what you do. I know these things, and the knowing is in my hands, which is the right place for it. On the third day of the deep cold, something happens that I've been building toward without announcing it. A sound in the night. You wake to it, not sure what it is, just a sound that doesn't fit, a sound that the night shouldn't contain, and you lie still for a moment with your eyes open in the dark, listening. There it is again, a dog. Not the distant neighbourhood dog bark you sometimes hear. A specific urgent sound, the high repeated bark of a dog that has found something and is calling for human attention with all the vocabulary it has. You sit up. Your mother is already at the door. She has the cloak on and the candle lit. The candle from beside the fire where it stays all night within easy reach for exactly this kind of moment. And she's looking out the door into the dark with the candle held low, keeping the flame alive. What is it, you say? I don't know, she says. Stay here. You don't stay here. You grab your cloak and follow her out. The night is the same hard, cold dark of a clear January night. The stars brilliant and cold and indifferent. The moon giving enough light to see by, if not to see details. The snow reflects the moonlight and you can see the shapes of the houses and the track. The dog is somewhere to the north, toward the mill. Your mother walks quickly toward the sound. You follow. The dog is Thomas Millward's dog, a large rough-coated animal that sleeps in the mill building and is not known for barking without cause. He's standing at the edge of the mill pond, and as you approach, the moonlight on the pond shows you what he's found. The ice has cracked. The ice on the mill pond, which has been solid for 3 weeks, has cracked along a seam near the channel where Thomas has been breaking it to free the wheel. Not a total failure, the ice hasn't given way completely, but a crack running across a significant section, and in the crack, visible in the moonlight, dark water. Dark water means thin ice. Dark water means the section near the channel is not what it was. And standing at the edge of the thin section, looking at it, is Thomas Millward himself. He's not standing on the ice. He's standing at the bank, the mill wheel behind him, and he's looking at the crack with an expression you can see even in moonlight. Not fear exactly, but the expression of a man who understands what he's looking at and is calculating what it costs him. The channel ice broke the seam, he says when you reach him. To your mother, not to you, though you're standing beside her. From when I was clearing it, the stress built up and he gestures at the crack. Can the wheel run? Your mother says. He looks at the wheel. Even in moonlight you can see the ice around it is different now. The channel is partially open. The cracking has freed it in places. The wheel might turn if the current is strong enough, and the remaining ice hasn't seized it. Tomorrow, he says, when there's light, I'll try it tomorrow. He looks at the dog who has stopped barking and is now sitting with the dignity of an animal that has done its job. I heard him, your mother says. Good, Thomas Millward says. You all stand for a moment at the edge of the mill pond in the January midnight, looking at the cracked ice and the dark water and the still wheel and the brilliant indifferent stars. The dog pants. breath-making small clouds in the cold air. This is not a crisis in the end. The ice cracked along a seam. The wheel might run tomorrow. The crack will likely refreeze in a few days if the cold holds. Thomas Millward has been managing this mill for 20 years, and he knows the ice and what the ice does and what it costs and what it gives back. But the dog called and you came and you're all standing here at midnight in January looking at dark water, and this is also what the village is. The dog calls and the people come and nobody asks why they came because the reason is obvious. You go home. The cold gets into you on the walk back. The few minutes without the fire's range, the cold, clear midnight air, and you come in through the door and go immediately to the fire pit and crouch down and hold your hands over the coals. The coals are still red under the peat ash, still alive, still holding. Your mother comes in and closes the door and looks at you by the fire. "Get back to bed," she says. You do, under the blanket, the straw shifting gently below the mattress, the blanket over your face, your own breath, warm. The stars through the smoke gap are the same stars they were 20 minutes ago, cold and brilliant and not particularly concerned with mill ponds or cracked ice or midnight walks. You sleep. The next day, Thomas Millward gets his wheel running for 6 hours before the ice seizes it again. 6 hours of grinding, which is 6 hours of grain getting ground, which means the pile in the mill building is smaller than it was, which means bread in Ashfield for another week. He takes it as a victory, a partial victory, which in January is the only kind available. You go to the mill to take your family's grain. Your mother sends you with the rye sack, what's left of it, and you carry it to the mill, and Thomas Millward takes it without ceremony and runs it through the millstones while you wait, the machinery loud and rhythmic and warm in a way that surprises you. The friction of the stones and the motion of the wheel generates heat, and the interior of the mill is several degrees warmer than outside. Not comfortable warm, but noticeably not cold warm, and you stand near the stones and feel the warmth of moving machinery. Thomas Millward's hands are wrapped today, both of them, in clean cloth bandages that Edith has put on him, the goose fat underneath. He works the mill with his hands wrapped, and the wrappings get dusty with flour immediately, but they stay on, and the hands are protected. "How's the wheel?" you ask. "Running," he says, "for today." "And tomorrow?" He makes the sound, the craftsman sound, the sound that means, "We'll see," and there's no point in guessing. Your grain comes out as flour, and you carry it home in the sack, a lighter sack than the rye you brought in, because flour is lighter than grain, but also a warmer sack. The freshly ground flour retains a little heat from the millstones, and the sack is warm in your arms as you carry it. Warm flour. This is one of those things. Hot, fresh ground flour smells extraordinary, rich and nutty and alive in a way that flour from the crock doesn't smell, the way anything fresh smells more intensely than its stored version. You carry this warm sack home through the cold, and you can smell it as you walk, and it smells like bread not yet made, like bread in potential, like the dinner that's coming. Your mother makes bread that afternoon. Not the everyday bread. Bread is expensive in flour. The daily pottage uses less. But it's been a good week. The wall got fixed, and the respite wood got cut, and the hedge is laid, and the flour is fresh, and bread is the specific pleasure of January that costs something and gives something back that pottage never quite gives. The bread goes into the clay pot that serves as an oven, set near the fire with coals around it, and it bakes slowly for an hour while the house fills with the smell of it. Agnes sits near the pot for the entire hour, watching it with the patience of someone who knows something good is coming and has decided to wait for it without complaint. The bread comes out brown on top, and dense and heavy and warm, and it smells like everything that is good about having fire in a cold house. Your mother cuts it with the knife, and the inside is hot and steaming, and she gives the first piece to Agnes, who eats it with both hands and her eyes closed. You eat yours standing by the fire. Hot bread in January. This is the pleasure that costs something and gives something back. The 4 of you, 3 of you, your father still with the oxen, still that shape in the space around the fire. You eat bread by the fire at the end of the 3rd week of January, and the bread is warm and the fire is warm, and outside the cold is not done, but inside the bread is real, and the warmth is real, and these things exist simultaneously, and both are true. This is January. This is the whole of it. The cold and the fire and the cracked hands and the midnight walk to the mill pond and Agnes against the goat and Hilda's wall and Maud's herb fat and the doubled mittens and the straw under the mattress and the warm flour in your arms and now the bread. All of it together is January. The 4th week arrives. February is worse than January, Maud said. The rye sack is a week from empty. The salt pork barrel is less than a quarter full. The dried peas are adequate. The turnips in the corner have been getting smaller by assessment. You check them every few days now. Pick out the ones that are starting to soften on the outside, and those go into the pottage immediately before they're lost, the rest carefully preserved. You're watching the stores the way your mother watches them, with a constant peripheral attention, a background arithmetic, not anxious, just attentive. The difference between anxiety and attention is that anxiety looks at what might go wrong without doing anything about it, and attention looks at what might go wrong and plans. Your mother is all attention. You're learning to be the same. The morning of the last day of January. You know it's the last day because the priest mentioned it yesterday. His breviary keeping track of things that the village otherwise navigates by feel and experience. The morning of the last day of January you wake to a smell. Different smell. Not the cold ash smell. Not the pottage smell. Something else. Something from outside, from the air coming in through the smoke gap. Something the air hasn't had in a long time. Mud. You smell mud. Not the frozen mud smell of the yard in frost. The actual smell of thawing mud, slightly sulphurous, slightly rich. The smell of earth that has ice in it, releasing the ice. The smell of ground giving up a little of the cold it's been holding. You sit up and look at the smoke gap. The sky visible through it is pale grey, which it always is in January. But the quality of the grey is different. Softer, less like metal, more like early morning in October, before the cold really set in, when the air still had the memory of summer in it. A mild day, not spring by any measure that matters. The frost is still on the ground. The water bucket is still frozen this morning. February is still 1 day away, and February is worse than January by everyone's reckoning. But something is different. You get up and start the fire, and you do it the same way you've done it every morning for a month. Flint, striker, tinder, kindling, small wood, larger wood, the sequence in your hands. And while the fire builds, you sit back on your heels and listen. Birds. One bird. Outside in the apple tree or near it, one bird making a sound that is not the silent sound of deep winter or the alarm sound of cold distress, just a sound. A bird making a sound in the morning because the morning feels slightly different, and the bird is responding to that difference. You listen to it. Agnes hears it too from under her blankets. A bird, she says, the same announcement tone she used for sun. And this is the kind of thing that happens in January. You notice the bird. You notice the slight quality of the grey sky. You notice the mud smell in the air. Not because these things mean it's over. It's not over. February is coming, and February is harder. But because these small things are the first signals of the direction of travel, winter has been going in one direction, and at some point the direction will reverse and spring will begin. These signals, the bird, the mud smell, the softer grey, are the first hints that reversal is coming. Not today, not this week, but coming. In the medieval world, these signals matter enormously. In the modern world, you can look at a weather app. You can check the forecast. The warmth is coming at a known date from a known direction, and you can plan around it with precision. In 1247, you read the world. You read the sky and the air and the sound of the birds and the behaviour of the animals. Brownie has been restless the last 2 days, pacing in her section in a way she doesn't normally pace. And from these readings you build a picture of what's coming. The picture isn't precise, but it's the best available, and it's built from genuine observation of real phenomena, and over generations of people reading the same signals in the same Lincolnshire landscape. The reading has become quite accurate. Your father would know the signals. Your grandfather would have known them better. Maud knows them. You're learning them. Slowly. By January, the pottage bubbles. Agnes comes to the fire. You give her the first bowl, which is what you always do. She takes it in both hands. This morning, the 4th week of January, the last day of January in the year 1247, in Ashfield in Lincolnshire, the pottage is grain and pea and the last useful bit of the turnip supply and a piece of salt pork the size of your fist, and it's hot. And Agnes wraps her hands around her bowl and drinks from it, and the steam rises in the light from the smoke gap. Outside, the bird. Inside, the fire. Your mother spins. The drop spindle drops and rises, and the thread forms, and the thread will become cloth, and the cloth will become warmth in some future that is still ahead of you. Not spring yet, not close to spring. But the direction of travel has given a signal, and the signal is spring is in that direction, and you are pointed at it. February comes the next day. February comes hard, the way Maud said. The mild morning was a tease, a brief exhale before the year's held breath came back. The first day of February brings wind, which January didn't have. January's cold was still and dry. February's cold moves. It comes from the north with a horizontal energy that gets into everything, finds every gap the stuffed grass didn't close, pushes under the door rope, comes through the smoke gap and makes the fire gutter. You stuff more grass into the wall gaps. You add a second rope at the door. You bank the fire broader and lower in the evenings to make it harder for the wind to disturb. The wind is a new problem, and you address it as a new problem, with the tools available, with the knowledge in your hands. It's February. The rye sack goes empty on the 6th day. You saw it coming. Your mother planned for it. 3 days before it went empty, she reduced the portions. Not dramatically, not in a way that Agnes noticed, just slightly. The pottage slightly thinner. The bread not made for several days. The body adjusts to slightly less if the reduction is gradual. The hunger is present but manageable. This is also knowledge. The body can be negotiated with if you do it slowly. Maud sends the peas. Your mother accepts them without the ritual resistance you expected, and without comment on whether you're fine or not. She just takes the peas and puts them in the pot. Maud also brings something else, a piece of smoked fish, dried hard in the cold. The kind of thing that keeps indefinitely in winter and has no equivalent in summer. smoked fish and dried peas and water and the last of the herbs from the beams, and the pottage for the next week is different from the grain pottage, but is pottage, is food, is warm and caloric and sufficient. Sufficient is February's word. Not comfortable, not generous, sufficient. You go to Lincoln. Your mother had this planned before she admitted it to herself, you think, or at least before she admitted it to you. A market day in Lincoln. The road passable after a week of dry cold that has consolidated the snow into manageable firmness. The 17-mile walk there and back manageable in a long day if you start before dawn. You carry what your mother has to trade. A length of cloth she finished weaving, folded and wrapped in clean cloth. Better quality than it looks folded, because she knows how to make cloth that looks better when opened than when packed. Some dried herbs from the beams, the surplus of last summer's gathering. A small pot of last year's honey from the one hive Martin keeps, which he's traded to your mother for something you were too young to understand the exchange of at the time. The road to Lincoln in early February is a test. The hard cold that consolidated the snow has also made the ruts in the road into frozen ridges that catch your feet, and the occasional soft patches where underground water keeps the surface from freezing are invisible under the snow, and you step into one and go into your knee and pull your leg back out with a sucking sound, and the cold water goes into your shoe, and you think of the ditch and of Maud's instructions, and you keep walking. Lincoln in early February is exactly what Lincoln always is. The largest city you've ever seen. The cathedral on its hill visible from miles away. The sheer scale of it. The walls, the streets, the hundreds and then thousands of people. Something that you can know intellectually from your trips there in summer, and still be slightly overwhelmed by in person. The cathedral, the Lincoln Cathedral, sitting on top of its hill above the city, begun generations ago and still not quite finished in the way that cathedrals are never quite finished. The towers rising above everything, the stone white and cold in the February light. You've been to Lincoln many times, but you stop for a moment on the road down into the city and look at it. The cathedral is enormous in a way that the small churches of the villages are not. It's a different kind of enormous than Thomas Millward's mill is enormous, or the Lord's Hall is enormous. Those are impressive because they're bigger than what you're used to. The cathedral is impressive in the way that things are impressive when they're operating on a scale that exceeds your available comparisons. There are men in your lifetime who saw those towers being added. Your grandfather might have watched them hoisting the stones. Your grandmother might have stood in Lincoln with flour money the way you're standing with cloth money, and looked up at that stone with the same feeling of something that exceeds comparison. It's that recent, that real. You keep walking. The market in Lincoln in February is smaller than the summer market, cold and brisk and purposeful, without the festive margin of warmth markets. The traders who are here because they have to be, because the business needs doing even in February, and they're efficient and direct and slightly impatient in the way that cold makes people efficient and direct and impatient. You sell the cloth. Your mother taught you to sell, show the quality, explain the provenance, name your price, and hold it to within a margin. The cloth goes to a mercer's assistant who examines it with the automatic competence of someone who has handled thousands of yards of cloth and knows its grade in seconds. He names a price. You name a higher one. He looks at you, 12 years old, not quite 13, hands wrapped in doubled mittens, shoes slightly stiff with the dried residue of this morning's soft patch. And he names a slightly higher price. You take it. It's fair. It's a fair price for good cloth in February in Lincoln, and you know it's fair because your mother told you what fair was, and this is what she said. With the cloth money you buy rye, a half sack enough for 3 weeks, and lentils, a small quantity, and a piece of salt fish that the fish merchant has in a barrel, preserved since autumn, the kind that lasts all winter. You carry it home. The walk back is harder than the walk there, because you're carrying more weight, and because the February wind comes with you from behind and pushes you and the sack simultaneously, and the pushing from behind sounds like it would help, but actually makes it harder to control your direction, especially on the icy ruts. You make it home before dark, barely. The last mile in the blue shadow light of late February afternoon, the load heavy on your back, your feet tired in the way that 17 miles of winter road makes feet tired. A deep tired, a structural tired, the tired of every small stabilizing muscle, having been working against ice and rut and soft patch all day. You push the door open, the smell of home. Your mother looks at the sack. She doesn't express the relief she feels, but you see it, in the slight easing of her shoulders, in the way she puts her hand on the rye sack and feels its weight, and says nothing for a moment. Good, she says, 3 weeks of rye, 3 weeks. That might take you to March. March might take you to the first spring markets. The first spring markets might take you to a better calculation. It might work out. Might. Agnes is asleep. Of course she is. Brownie is watching you from the goat section with the expression of an animal that has been patient about the water situation all day and is registering this patience formally. You get the water. The fire is down. Your mother has been out. You build it up. The kindling, the small wood, the larger wood, the sequence that's in your hands now as completely as anything your body knows. The fire comes up. The room warms. You eat saltfish and pottage, which is not the most delicious thing you've ever eaten, but is hot and is sufficient. And the fire is going, and Agnes wakes up for her bowl and eats it with her eyes mostly closed and goes back to sleep. Your mother spins. The spindle drops. The spindle rises. The thread forms. Outside, February. Inside, warmth. There is a night in the 3rd week of February when you wake in the deep hours to a sound that isn't the dog or the wind or the fire. A knock. Not Thomas Reeves' knock. Not 3 paws 1. Just a knock. Uncertain, not quite loud enough, as if the person making it isn't sure they're doing the right thing. Your mother is already at the door before you're fully awake. It's one of Hilda's neighbours, a young woman whose name you know but aren't sure of, her face in the moonlight showing the expression of someone who has made a decision after a long time of not making it. Hilda, she says, she's not right. Your mother gets her cloak, gets the candle, looks at you. Stay, she says this time. You stay. Agnes sleeps. You sit by the fire in the deep hours of the February night and watch the coals, and listen to the village outside and the wind in the thatch above you and the breathing of the goats. Your mother is out in the dark with a candle. Your father is not here. You are 12 years old and you're sitting by the fire in a cold medieval house in February 1247. And you are responsible for this fire and these animals and your sleeping sister, and the warmth of this room, while your mother is out doing the thing that people do when other people need them in the dark. You add a piece of wood to the fire, not too much, exactly the right amount. You sit back, the fire accepts it, the coals glow. You wait. Your mother comes back an hour later. She comes in quietly, not waking Agnes. She hangs up her cloak and comes to the fire and warms her hands. You wait. She's all right, she says. Bad cold. Chest. Maud's sitting with her. Will she? Maud says she'll be all right. She pauses. We'll see. She sits by the fire. You sit by the fire. Neither of you says anything else. Outside, the wind moves in the frozen February dark. Inside the fire burns its slow, patient burn. After a while, your mother reaches out and puts her hand briefly on top of yours, just for a moment. Then she takes it back and picks up the spindle. The spindle drops. You watch it. The weeks of February. Hilda does get better. Slowly, over the course of the last 2 weeks of the month, the chest cold loosening its grip, her hands healing in the warmth of a house that Maud and your mother and other neighbours have conspired to keep properly, fired throughout the worst of it. She starts appearing at her door again, starts walking the track in the mornings, starts looking like herself rather than like the Colds version of herself. The rye holds. The saltfish gets eaten. The lentils get eaten. The dried herbs from the beams are almost entirely gone. The bundles that were full in October now nothing but stalks. The herbs used up in the daily pottage and the daily care and the small treatments that Maud applies to whoever needs them through the winter. The wood pile goes low twice more. Both times you replenish it. You learn the balance of the wood pile now, how much it should hold, what level to replenish at, the calculation of days remaining against wood, remaining against expected cold remaining. This is arithmetic your hands can do. It lives in your hands now alongside the fire starting and the thatch patching and the hedge laying and everything else January and February have taught. Your father comes home in the last week of February. He comes in the afternoon, through the gate, carrying the small bundle of things he took with him in November. He's thinner. He's been feeding himself on what the Lord's byre had available and what the Lord's hall sent down for the ox tenders, which was adequate but not generous, and 3 months of not generous shows on him in the specific way that winter shows. He looks at the house, at the thatch, which you repaired, at the yard, which is cleared and stacked and managed, at the wood pile, which is where it should be, at the garden fence, which is still standing. He doesn't say anything about any of this. He comes inside. Agnes launches herself at him with the specific force of a 5-year-old who has been patient for 3 months and is done being patient. He catches her and holds her, and the expression on his face when he holds her is the expression that adults have when they've been away from the people they love and are back with them, an expression that is relief and joy and something quieter underneath both. He sets her down. He looks at you. "Fire's going," he says. "It's been going," you say. He nods. His face is the face your mother's face is when something is right and acknowledged and requires no more words. He sits by the fire. Your mother puts pottage in a bowl and gives it to him, and he eats it with both hands, the way you all eat it, the bowl warm in his cold hands. The 4 of you, by the fire. February still outside. The cold still real. March still ahead, which has its own challenges. The early spring is hungry. The stores at their lowest before the first green things come up. But March is not February, and February is not January, and January is almost done. The spindle drops. Your father is home. The fire burns. That night before sleep you do the things your hands know. The coals together, the night piece of peat, set with care, the chickens checked, the goats watered, the straw still there under the mattress, which you've maintained all winter, replacing it when it compacted. The straw rustling softly as you climb in. The blanket over your face. Your breath. Warm. The fire breathing in the centre of the room. Your father's breathing from across the room. The specific sound of it. Back in the house after 3 months of absence. The sound that makes the room different from what it's been. Agnes breathes. Your mother's spindle drops and rises one last time, and then she puts it away for tonight and lies down, and the room is all breath and fire. Outside, February. Inside, your family and your fire and the warmth you've spent all winter making. You have learned something this winter that doesn't have a name exactly. Not just the specific knowledge, the straw, the mittens, the peat, the goose fat. Underneath the specific knowledge, something else. Something about what warmth is. Something about the fact that warmth is not a given. Warmth is not background. Warmth is made daily by specific people doing specific things, and the making of it is the life, and the life is the making of it, and to live in a cold place and be warm is an achievement every single day. This is what has been forgotten. Not the information. You can find the information, the goose fat and the straw, and the doubled mitts. The felt truth of it. The understanding that warmth costs something and gives something back, and the exchange is what the day is. Centuries will pass, the house will fall and be rebuilt and fall again until nothing remains above the ground. But the ridge and furrow of your fields will be there, faint from above, the long gentle swells of strips ploughed over hundreds of years, still readable in the grass of what was once Ashfield's common field. The land keeps what was done to it. The cold will be solved. Glass in windows, insulation in walls, pipes carrying hot water without fire or buckets or frozen mornings. The central heating will arrive, and the fire pit will go, and the straw under the mattress will seem like poverty, and the peat will seem like hardship, and all the things your body has learned this winter will be unnecessary, which is good, which is progress, which is what progress is for. But the need for warmth won't go. The need to be warm, to find warmth, to make warmth and hold it and tend it through the night, that won't change. Because the body won't change. Because January won't change. Because the human animal is a warm-blooded animal in a cold, capable world, and warmth is always the project. Always, whether the solution is fire in a pit or pipes in the wall. The project doesn't change, only the means. And on the days in whatever warm future exists, on the days when the heating system breaks down and the pipes freeze and the house goes cold, and the cold is a surprise rather than the background condition of existence, on those days the person who knows that warmth is made will be less frightened than the person who thought warmth just was. The fire breathes. Outside, the last days of February, the cold still doing what February cold does. The wind still finding the gaps, the earth still frozen hard and deep. But the mud smell that you caught for one morning at the end of January is closer now. The bird in the apple tree was not nothing. These things are real. Spring is in that direction, and you are pointed at it. Your father is home. The fire is going. Agnes is asleep. Warmth enough. Warmth enough. Let the spindle be still tonight. Let the fire do its long, slow work without watching. Let your father's breathing and your mother's breathing and Agnes's breathing all slow together toward sleep, toward the same slow rhythm that breathing takes when the body has decided the day is done and done enough. Let January be behind you. Let February be finishing. Let the small warm pocket under the blanket hold your face the way it has held it all winter. Through cold mornings and wet shoes and cracked hands and midnight knocks and the long, careful arithmetic of sufficient. You made it, not through luck, not through waiting, through the fire each morning, through the doubled mittens and the straw and the peat and the goose fat and the knowledge in your hands and the knowledge in your mother's hands and the knowledge that Maud carries, and the knowledge that your grandmother put into the shape of mittens with an air gap between the layers, through the village that shows up when the dog barks, through the person who gets up at midnight and checks, through all the small specific acts of warmth maintenance that add up each day to still here, still warm, still going, the fire, the fire, the fire says still burning, still here, good night.